Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's edition of the Sunday Wire. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We're streaming out live on the Alternate Current Radio Network and also at 21stCenturyWire.com. This is a live stream that's also going out on X. We're also going out on Facebook Live, as well as Rumble, BitChute, and of course, YouTube. YouTube, if they'll let us actually stream this. We had some problems last week, which we're in the background trying to fix. Copyright issues and all sorts of censorship issues, which YouTube is famous for. We're working all that stuff out. Thank you for your patience on that. Now, we're going to be having a very interesting conversation during this first segment, and I'll welcome our guest. He's in the green room right now. I'm going to welcome him on stage in a moment, but this is episode 533 of this weekly Omnibus News and Analysis radio program, again brought to you here on ACR. And fantastic midweek wire. We just launched that new program on Wednesdays. We had Freddie Ponton on. We'll have Freddie on again this Wednesday. We're breaking down a lot of issues. Ukraine. We talked about the Nord Stream issue as well. And today we're going to have a little bit of a different conversation, a little more in depth. Now, we gave you a little bit of a sneak preview about what you might find in this unpacking session we're going to have on the UK Column News. I was on there Friday with Mike Robinson, and we gave a little bit of a sneak preview there of what to expect. But I'm going to bring on stage right now the author of this article, which is featured up at 21stCenturyWire.com right here, exclusive. Former Ukrainian commander-in-chief can be prosecuted for a role in Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. Now, this is an incredibly complex story, and this is like layers upon layers of deception, red herrings, things we know, things we don't know. And to help us navigate this a little bit, let me bring onto the stage our guest. His name is Jeffrey Brodsky. He is also a writer as well as a journalist. He actually was on site, one of the first people on site to cover the Nord Stream sabotage site, which was down on the sea using drones with engineer Eric Anderson. You may be familiar with their work if you have been following the story. Jeff, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on your show, Patrick.
So, Jeff, let's get straight to it here. The article in question, again, we've linked to this. It's also on my X feed right now. Excellent piece. There's a lot in here, obviously, a lot to unpack. But let's just start with the crux of the story. The protagonist here, Valeriy Zaluzhniy, Jeffrey, very interesting character, former head of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, and somehow he ends up in London. He's decamped in Mayfair. They've turned him into the ambassador from Ukraine to Britain. There he is. He's scrubbed up very nicely. He's looking pretty posh in a Savile Row suit. That's his new role. And looking at your article, Jeffrey, it makes me question why Zaluzhniy was brought to London to begin with, because now things are kind of connecting a little bit, Jeff. So, I mean, I don't know if you can shed any more light on this, but where do we need to start on this story, Jeff? And by the way, for those who don't know you, just introduce yourself and how you got into this story to begin with.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that could be a fun way to start. Well, as you said in your introduction, I'm a writer, but I'm not really a journalist. When the Nord Stream pipelines were blown up, and this is way back September 26, 2022, I was just fascinated and captivated. And I think, like many people who read independent media, we were frustrated that it seemed to that mainstream media was not asking tough questions, not investigating the attack. And this is, after all, let's remember the scale of the attack. These pipelines are valued at $20 billion. And, their destruction, it stands as the largest act of industrial sabotage in history. And I would say the most pressing geopolitical mystery of our time. So despite not really having a background in journalism, I had done some nonfiction freelance writing. But I wasn't really interested in journalism, and I wasn't much of a political person in general. But I was frustrated that this wasn't being seriously investigated. So I just read as much about it as I could. I did some independent research on my own. I talked to some people about it. And when I felt that I had enough compelling information, and I felt that I had enough to say that wasn't being reported before. I won a grant to investigate the sabotage, and I've been investigating it ever since. And it's still, I think, a fascinating, very important topic, especially for world peace. So
No,
that's sort of my
absolutely.
background. My background is mainly in literature, not in investigative journalism.
Right. So you're sort of an incidental or accidental investigative journalist in this, and it is a fascinating story. I agree with you. This is one of the most compelling mysteries, geopolitical mysteries. The ramifications, Jeff, are huge. And I think what's interesting about this piece that you've written, once again, what's interesting about this piece is this basically, and it's important to lay out on this. Full disclosure, I'm not convinced about the Ukrainian super soldier and diver story. However, regardless of where you stand, whether you think the Americans did it, whether you think it was a NATO op, whether you think the Ukrainians did it, regardless, this story kind of opens up a real diplomatic can of worms for a lot of different countries, and especially for Britain and for Germany and as also. That's why it's interesting. You've opened the door to geopolitical, Jeff, and the analysis in here is pretty compelling. I mean, you've talked to a number of international law scholars, and what are they telling you here? Because the implication is that Valeriy Zaluzhniy, as the new Ukrainian ambassador to Britain, that one assumes that he has diplomatic immunity. And while he's been fingered for the Nord Stream sabotage in this Ukrainian scenario, but does he really have diplomatic immunity, Jeff?
Not according to six very highly regarded legal scholars that I've spoken to. So, let's take a step back. Where did this all start? So in August 2024, an allegedly bombshell report was published in the Wall Street Journal. And, unless you were impersonating, Rip Van Winkle, if you have any interest whatsoever in geopolitics, you probably read this article. So I probably won't talk too much about it, but basically the article says that Ukraine was responsible for the nurturing sabotage. In the article, it says that Zaluzhniy, General Zaluzhniy, whose picture we have just seen, he says and he was the highest ranking Ukrainian military officer at the time of the attack. And of course, as you said, Patrick, he is now the current ambassador to the UK. So allegedly, he was overseeing the operation and he greenlighted the attack, right? This same article goes on to say that President Zelensky initially sanctioned the plan, but then later he tried to stop it at the behest of the CIA. This is quite convenient because here we go. It exonerates Zelensky. But then the same article, the Wall Street Journal, goes on to say that Zaluzhniy enjoys diplomatic immunity as the ambassador to the UK. Well, when I read the article, that was one of the things that I'm not a legal scholar, but it didn't seem right to me. And sure enough, I contacted 6 legal scholars, all of whom I should say are published authors, have written books on international law. They do research in things like the law of immunity, diplomatic and consular law. So these are people that really know what they're talking about. These are scholars. And all 6 of them conclusively told me Zaluzhniy is not immune from prosecution just because he's the ambassador to the UK. Now, it doesn't mean he can just be tried and prosecuted immediately. There are steps, and I'm sure we're going to talk about some of these steps. But to make a long story short, the Wall Street Journal got this crucial component of their article completely wrong. Zaluzhniy is not immune from prosecution, and we have now scholars on the record telling us this and correcting that. I would say pretty serious omission in the Wall Street Journal article, especially because this article was read by tens of millions of people. It was the thing for half of the month of August almost.
Yeah, I'll bring that back up on screen again. I mean, this is the Wall Street Journal story here. Yeah, this was huge. I mean, August is normally, sometimes slow in terms of news, in terms of a news month, but this basically dominated pretty much everything. And what was interesting about this, and we can get into the what you think the merits or the drawbacks of this story here by Boyan Pensevsky, Boyan Pevsensky, I think his name is. So we can talk about the Ukrainian diver story as a viable theory or not. We can discuss that, but let's bring your piece up on screen as well here, and we'll be able to kind of go through this. Now, it's my understanding, Jeff, and your legal analysis here is really the first part of the article. That's up at 21stcenturywire.com. And I have to say, this legal analysis is very thorough, Jeffrey. You have not left many stones unturned in terms of the possibilities. And we'll look at some of the details of this. But it's my understanding that, you have a couple of potential options here that would cause, or available options here, where someone could take Zaluzhniy out of the UK. Let's say if this case goes into some sort of a hearing, or someone needs to be deposed in Germany or even in Ukraine. But the receiving state, which is the UK, when you have an ambassador, the receiving state receives the ambassador, in this case, from Ukraine. And the receiving state, you have immunity, but only immunity for, is this my understanding correct, for crimes that would be committed in the receiving state. This wouldn't cover previous international crimes or war crimes that happened before you were appointed ambassador. So from that, is that one of the glaring omissions that you picked up in this Wall Street Journal report? Oh, hold on for a second. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, the glaring omission is the fact, and I'm just going to read one of the scholars, what one of the scholars told me, because he says it very clearly. He writes, diplomatic immunity protects diplomats from jurisdiction of the host state, as you pointed out, the UK in this case, as outlined in Article 31 of the Geneva Convention on Diplomatic Relations. However, this immunity generally applies only to the actions of the diplomat in the receiving state. So what you just said was correct. You hit the nail on the head. The only addition to that is, and other scholars have spoken to me about this, it's not only when he's in the UK, he's also immune when he travels on diplomatic missions outside of the UK. So if he's working or traveling, is in his capacity as an ambassador, he is immune. But let's say he went on vacation to Germany, one of the countries that should be taking a great interest in unraveling this Nord Stream mystery, because it has butchered their economy, the loss of cost-effective Russian gas. He could be, for example, arrested in Germany if he was there on vacation and not there as the ambassador to the UK. So yes, you did hit the nail on the head, basically.
And the other option is actions in the receiving state, not when he's in Ukraine. Then there's also, Ukraine could also waive immunity. That's another possibility. Or the UK could declare him persona non grata as well. And so is there a possibility that a European arrest warrant or Interpol or something like that could be raised, or through Eurojust at The Hague? Do we have any idea of how that might be processed?
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit, because it gets a little complicated, because you have a lot of actors here. We have the UK, we have Ukraine, and then we have other countries that may want to maybe not prosecute him, but at least question him under oath as a citizen rather than as the ambassador to the UK. So which country has the power to waive his immunity? Because a prerequisite to him being extradited to any country to testify under oath, for example, is that his immunity is waived. Who has the power to do this? Well, it is the sending state, which is Ukraine, of course, in this case. So, but he's stationed in the UK. So here's how what would happen. Let's say that Germany wanted to prosecute him, or at least question him. Okay, so the UK would request to Ukraine that his immunity is waived. Okay, and then he could be extradited to another country. So it's the UK. It's the UK that has. Excuse me. It is Ukraine that has the final decision to waive immunity, but the UK can request his immunities waived. That is one option. Okay. Another legal resource would be, for example, I mentioned earlier, it's something called the Geneva Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And this provides that Germany can ask the British government to request Zaluzhniy's immunity be waived. Again, Ukraine doesn't have to do this. They wouldn't have to accede to this request. But I'm told by legal scholars that this step would at least bring some pressure to bear on the UK. However, like I said earlier, it's important to understand that the receiving state, again, the receiving state, the UK, can only request this of Ukraine. They can't do it themselves. But there are some more legal options, and we can get into those now or get into those later if you want.
Yeah, yeah. So it is interesting because he's kind of the fall guy in this. I mean, I know the official story that they're running with is that this was something that was dreamed up by Zelensky and his inner team there to Defense Military Intelligence. Then the CIA got wind of it. This is their story, by the way, not ours. The CIA got wind of it, and then they tried to stop it, but it was too late, and the divers had gone rogue. I mean, this is like something out of one of those, spy novels, Jeff. I mean, it's really hard to believe, but that's the story they're going with. So that it does have legal implications, doesn't it? Especially for Zaluzhniy. So they've kind of thrown him, really not thrown him under the bus, but and this he's not an inconsequential character. He's been brought to London for a reason, Jeffrey. They're teaching him English. He's just launched a book. I think I've got that here. He's got the trilogy of a new book. Here you go. Yahoo News. Zaluzhniy releases new book, My War, first planned in a trilogy. He's got an agent. They really fixed this guy up. I mean, he could be a future president of Ukraine. I mean, I'm not exaggerating there. That it does look like one of those people that the Brits are lining up. What's your general thought about Zaluzhniy and the predicament he's in?
Well, let me answer that by going through some of the legal things. But let me make one comment, just a very surface comment about the mainstream media reporting. So, two of the major outlets are German outlets that have broken the, we'll talk about this later, the Andromeda story and the connection to Zaluzhniy and the 6 alleged saboteurs that rigged the pipelines with bombs using the Andromeda, which is a sailing yacht, 15-meter sailing yacht. The Der Spiegel reporting, they deny that Zelensky knew about this until June, whereas the Wall Street Journal reports that he initially approved the mission. So there's some inconsistencies in the reporting. To sort of break down, some of this complex legal stuff and just put it in simple terms. What we can probably do is let's take, for example, why don't we take the case of Germany? Okay. Now there'll be a lot of skepticism here because people are going to say, well, Germany has showered the Ukraine with military aid during the war. It's a big supporter of Ukraine. So, why would Germany do this? Well, Germany does have enormous incentive to, let's say, to bring these perpetrators to justice. What do I mean by that? Germany, perhaps, of course, after Russia, is by far the countries that have undergone the most economic hardship resulting from the sabotage. Just to give one simple example. Your audience probably knows there's Nord Stream 1, there's Nord Stream 2. They each have 2 lines, so there are 4 lines in total, right? Nord Stream 1 went online in 2011. Nord Stream 2 was never certified, although it did have gas in it when the bombs ruptured one of its lines. So Nord Stream 1 alone, Patrick, delivered 59 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year to Germany. That volume is staggering. It is as much as 66% of the country's gas consumption and 42% of its supply. So this is a big deal for Germany. A lot of this massive deindustrialization we are seeing in Germany, if not most of it, is due to the fact that they no longer have access to this cost-effective Russian gas, and therefore their industries, especially their industries like chemical industries, that rely on heavy energy consumption to produce their products, they've lost their competitive advantage. So there is major reason why Germany could actually pursue this, and we know the German economy is suffering much right now. Also, we have German elections coming up. Well, 2 of the parties, Sarah Wagenknecht's party and the AfD, have said publicly that one of their options is to start delivering gas through the one pipeline of Nord Stream 2, which is the line B of Nord Stream 2, that was not damaged in the attack, and it's still intact. So there is a small chance that this is actually pursued. So it's not just like, oh, this is never going to happen. The geopolitical dynamics and the wheels of that are turning. We will see what happens, because I imagine these German elections are going to have a lot, a huge impact on this. The second thing is that this isn't just an attack on Russia. This is West on West attack, because yes, Russia outright owned Nord Stream 2, but Nord Stream 1 was 49% owned by Western energy firms, 2 or 3 of which I don't remember, but certainly at least 2 were German energy firms. So there is incentive to get down to the bottom of this. And also for the EU as a whole. I mean, something like 30% of the total gas demand of the EU could have been fulfilled by these pipelines, and was fulfilled by these pipelines. So this is a big deal. So, what can be done? And then, of course, so what can be done? Well, let's say Britain wanted to do something, or let's say Germany pressured Britain behind the scenes and said, do something. So like you said, one is to declare Zaluzhniy persona non grata, and this can be done. Okay, so let's say Britain declared him persona non grata. What would happen? He could be thrown out of the UK, sent back to Ukraine, and then extradited to Germany. Well, is this far-fetched? Well, maybe, but remember that there have been very public reports in the mainstream media that Zaluzhniy and Zelensky have a political rivalry. Zaluzhniy was his greatest political rival, and is certainly fighting for him for the presidency of Ukraine. So maybe Zelensky himself says, okay, maybe he waives his immunity and lets him be prosecuted. This is possible. There are some legal and diplomatic avenues.
That's it's a very interesting angle you bring up there, Jeffrey, because yes, we know how insecure Zelensky is. Some say, he's teetering on the verge of total paranoia right now. He's suspended elections. The end is potentially nigh with the suspension of U.S. funding to Ukraine and these types of things. And if he sees that, of course, whoever the replacement is, I mean, if they have elections, then Zaluzhniy would probably be put forward, I would think. But if there was an engineered coup, which is not unusual, the U.S. and British do this all the time, they'll engineer a regime change. But you'd need someone who has the respect of the military to do that, and someone who the military would, who would follow the commands of whoever the interim president is, and actually he fits the bill for that. So what you're talking about there, Jeff, is not far-fetched. That Zelensky could potentially, for some temporary advantage, throw Zaluzhniy under the bus. I mean, I'm not saying that's out of the realms of possibility. I think that's very plausible. Go ahead.
Yeah, right. I mean, it would be Machiavellian, but it's certainly not beyond him. As you said, he's desperate. He knows his regime is coming to an end, and this is possible. What I think maybe might be interesting, if you wanted to talk about this, Patrick, for your audience, this might be interesting. That Poland, there's a whole. So you have UK, Ukraine, Germany. Well, the other actor that we have not spoken about yet is Poland.
Oh, yes.
Because Poland, of course, in the news. Poland, of course, has a long history of opposing the Nord Stream project, the Nord Stream pipelines, saying that this was a threat to its security, and this would mean Russia was going to take over Europe, this, that, and the other. So Poland has a long-standing opposition to these pipelines. And, of course, Poland was reported by mainstream media in Germany and in this Wall Street Journal report that that Germany has issued an arrest warrant for one of the divers who was living outside of Warsaw. And supposedly Poland ignored the arrest warrant. Germany supposedly was up in arms about it and furious about it. And the Poland, their government is calling him a hero, calling these saboteurs heroes. So let me, if I could, I'll get a little bit into the Polish legal component of this.
Yeah, we put this up on screen here. This is from Ukrainska Pravda. Polish prosecutor's office says Nord Stream explosion suspect has left for Ukraine. So the Poles let him go. Basically, is that what happened? They didn't arrest him. They kind of let him flee, didn't they?
No, he's in fact, if we want to put up my article, there's also that tweet. Is it the Polish prime minister or the president? I don't remember. But what that tweet from my article is, this is ignited a diplomatic row at the highest levels of government.
Yeah, there it is. Donald Tusk.
Yeah, if you want to read it, maybe you want to read that for the audience. I mean, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, so Donald Tusk from Poland says, to all the initiators and patrons of Nord Stream 1 and 2, the only thing you should do today about it is apologize and be quiet. So basically, do your patriotic duty and look the other way, because this is the Polish view of this issue, which is that we support the Nord Stream sabotage. I mean, that's even to not even mention Sikorsky, Ann Applebaum's husband, tweeting out the day of the explosion saying, "Thank you, USA." I mean, that raised a lot of yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. So let me just read for your audience what one of these legal scholars told me about Poland. He says the following. And by the way, I should also mention that all 6 of these sources are quoted by name. There's no anonymous quotes. These people all went on the record. They're all in the article that you published on 21st Century. So 21st Century Wire. So he says, if Germany believes that Poland is deliberately instructing the investigation, Germany could file a complaint at the European Court of Justice, arguing that Poland is violating European law by not cooperating in a cross-border criminal investigation. He continues, Germany could also use diplomatic action through EU channels, or even, listen to this, even sanctions within the EU legal framework if there's clear non-compliance with mutual legal assistance obligations. So Germany has some legal recourse against Poland also, which is fascinating. And the relationship between those 2 countries right now is not good. They're at each other's throats. And when this war in Ukraine eventually ends, this may break out into the open.
Yeah. Wow, this is fascinating. I mean, because it really kind of puts a lot of countries in a potential bind here. We're not even talking about the very plausible scenario that this might have been done by NATO, a joint operation happening during Baltops 22. Of course, Seymour Hersh's reporting is quite famous and implicating this particular scenario. But it means, Jeffrey, that you have Germany, you have Denmark, you have Sweden, you have the United States, you have Britain, you have Poland, you have an innumerable number of potential NATO member states that could in some way have knowledge of or have been part of this sabotage operation. And so this creates a whole lot of political problems potentially between these countries, that whoever is going to be holding the can on this, or everybody has to agree to be quiet about it for a period of time. I mean, it's very awkward, this situation, for NATO, but also for the individual member states as well. And the U.S. is putting a lot of pressure on Europe right now on many different levels. Go ahead, Jeff.
It is. I should probably mention your audience what the Russian, because Russia has some legal, it's very limited, but Russia itself has some legal recourse also. But before we do that, we've mentioned, was this a NATO operation? Did the U.S. do it in conjunction, working together with Norway, as Seymour Hersh has reported, or did the German mainstream media and the American mainstream media get it right? And is this team of 6 Ukrainians who allegedly traveled aboard, like we said, this Andromeda, which is a 15-meter sailing yacht, did they actually execute this sabotage operation? But before we discuss the details of this Andromeda theory, your audience is probably thinking, well, okay, this guy investigates Nord Stream. What does he think? Who did it? Who does he think did it? And I'm going to come out and say that I do not know whether it was ultimately Ukrainian divers or American divers who placed the bombs on the pipelines. However, I don't think at this point That is really the important thing, because we don't have definitive proof either way of that. But I think everyone who's following this story should, keep their eyes on the ball. Why? So let's just say, even if Ukraine's role was merely to provide, plausible deniability for the U.S. and these 6 Ukrainians aboard Andromeda were, they're simply patsies who never actually rigged the pipelines with the bombs. Okay, we know for sure now that Ukraine is implicated, and we know for sure at a minimum they're accessory to the crime. We also know the U.S. again for sure, certainly we know the U.S. for sure provided diplomatic cover and certainly concealed evidence, which is of course a crime in itself. So neither country warrants exoneration, in my opinion, and frankly, neither does Sweden. We can talk about Sweden later too, because they play a critical role in this massive global crime. So, I should say, I believe at this point that the nationality and the backers and the planners and the executors of the operation is really not the most important aspect of this crime. I think instead, we as people who, are concerned about imperialism and international, and believe that international law has a purpose, and that or believe that wars almost never lead to anything productive, and neither does violence. The most important aspects of this crime, we should keep our our gaze on the fact that this is an illegal operation that was perpetrated by the West, not only on Russia, but it's also a major West on West unresolved crime. And that is really what's important at this stage. And there's just no doubt, just to say it again, there's just no doubt that the U.S. and Ukraine are involved in some level, whether or not it was Ukrainian or American divers who actually planted the bombs. At this point, that's not the most important thing.
Yeah, and then just to move on, I mean, you mentioned Denmark and Sweden, and this is where things are getting very interesting. I just want to also point people to Jeffrey's Substack. If you go, there's some great investigative pieces here. One of the most important ones, of course, is right there in the upper left-hand corner there, about the story regarding the High Courts of Justice, Business and Property Courts of England and Wales. And the lawsuit is very revealing, isn't it, with Nord Stream Aggie and Lloyd's of London. And this has kind of brought in some new stuff to discovery that has kind of made this, it's really spiced up this case. Jeff, if you just explain that aspect of it.
Yeah, well, thanks for showing my Substack, and I hope that people who are interested in the story read that, because it's a fascinating story. I won't be say too much about it in hopes that people read it. But to make a long story short, the pith of it is that the owners of Nord Stream 1, which is what you said, Nord Stream Aggie. Did you say Aggie or AG, by the way, Patrick?
Or no, AG, Nord Stream AG. Yeah.
Okay, so I thought maybe I was getting it wrong. So Nord Stream AG, who are the owners of Nord Stream 1, who include, again, 49% of those owners are Western energy firms. They're suing their insurers, who are Western insurers. Again, this is West on West, West against West. They're suing the Western insurers, if I remember correctly, is it 400 million euros or 300? I think it's 400 million euros. For 300 million euros, because they're saying someone blew up our pipelines, and therefore we're not being able to use them, we're not getting revenue, et cetera. And so the insurers have responded in a court of law saying, well, they're not insured because this was it was an act of war, and our insurance doesn't cover that. Well, so Nord Stream AG has responded to the insurer saying, well, okay, then tell us who did it, because you have to identify the perpetrator. So what's so fascinating about that is that if the Western insurers are either going to have to pay up to the tune, I think it was 400 million euros, if I remember correctly, maybe 3, but I think, again, 400 million euros, they're going to have to pay all that money out, or they're going to have to unmask the perpetrator. They're going to have to prove in a court of law who did it and how they know. So it's a fascinating thing, and I would encourage people to read the piece. It's actually pretty short. It's a pretty short piece, but it's interesting stuff.
No, absolutely. And again, we'll put that up on screen. The title of Jeff's Substack here, New Revelations from Nord Stream Expedition. And I might also add to that, I'll bring up on screen as well your article, which you did at the time with, I believe it was the Gray Zone. Let me see if we can bring that up on screen as well, where you were actually on site. 1 second. Let me see if we can find that. Here we are. We'll bring that up on screen as well, if we can. Anyway, we'll bring that up just momentarily. But there it is. So yeah, Jeff, tell us about that. I mean, before we go any further, Jeff, I mean, that was quite an adventure, wasn't it? Being one of the first people on site there with the Scandinavian engineer Eric Anderson, and you guys done an incredible recce. You've reported on it here in the Gray Zone, which is I think that's linked in your article in 21st Century Wire. What was that experience like, Jeff?
Well, let me also I should say beforehand, I'm given permission by the outlets that I write for to repost my articles on Substack once they appear in the original outlet first. And that article about the legal proceedings that was actually first published in Covert Action magazine. So it can be read there.
Yeah. Great publication. Covert Action. Yes.
Wonderful editors and wonderful people writing for that. I learned a lot by writing for them. So how did this all happen? Well, I met Eric on Twitter. I was saying things about sabotage that I think he liked, and he was saying things that I know I liked. And we went there. We went to the blast sites, and we captured drone images that had never been seen by the public before. We captured. We had drone images, drone footage. We had the boat came equipped with a sonar device. We had sonar images, and we were able to do a forensic analysis of the blast site. Particularly one blast site.
Okay. So I'm sitting here with Eric Anderson, and Eric has looks like an interesting device in his hand.
We're just toggling between these two. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, it's up to you if you want to play the video. But yes, we went there. The most important. There were a lot of things. There were a lot of things that we did. We really wanted to figure out.
23rd, late afternoon.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. Sorry about that.
We really wanted to figure out 3 things when we went there. We wanted to know the amount of explosives used to blow up the pipelines. In other words, how much TNT equivalent was used. We wanted to know the type of charges. Were these linear shaped charges? Were these bulk explosives? Were these other kinds of with these other kinds of shaped charges? And we wanted to know where the bombs were placed. Were they placed on the pipeline, under the pipeline, next to the pipeline? Were they buried in the seabed? Those were the 3 things that we wanted to find out. And of course, we wanted to capture these images and share them publicly of the blast sites, because the BBC and Expressen had gone to one of the blast sites before, but we were the only independent investigation. In fact, we're still the only independent investigation that had gone to at least 4 of the blast sites, to 4 different places. So the big thing that came out of that, there were a lot of things, but I guess the most important thing from that expedition was that the mainstream media, the Guardian and the New York Times, for example, they were writing articles saying that about 500 kilograms of TNT were used to rupture the pipelines at all the blast sites. And we figured out that was way off. Our data indicates that it was only between 10 and 40 kilograms. And most experts that I interviewed and talked to and quoted on the record say it was closer to 10 kilograms of explosives. So mainstream media was, what was it? They were was it 100? They were nearly 100 times off, not 100, 50 times. They were 50 times off on how much TNT was used TNT equivalent, I should say, was used to blow up these pipelines. That was really the big thing that came from that. In addition to the wonderful sonar images that the captain of the boat was able to capture, and the wonderful drone images that Eric was able to capture. You saw him on that video with the drone in his hand.
Yeah, we'll just that's what's this footage of here, Jeffrey? What are we looking at? The boot.
Yeah, let's talk about the boot. So the boot. This, when I published that article, it really went viral. Probably not for the right reasons. Let's talk a little bit about the boot. So we found the boot in the Swedish exclusive economic zone, about 5 meters from the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, line A. Okay, and of course we were like, oh my gosh, what's this boot? And we were very interested in it. Well, it turns out, okay, that the boot, and you know, let me quote Eric here if I can. Let me see if I can find Eric's quote about this, because this is important. Maybe if you want, let me see. Maybe if you want to pull up my article, this is important.
Yeah, we'll bring up your article here. We'll try to grab that in a moment. But the gist of, I think, what Eric Anderson is saying is he believes that that boot might not be from somebody who was doing a NATO op during Baltops 22.
No, we now know. We didn't know at the time. Okay, we didn't know at the time, but we do know the backstory on the boot. Okay, here's the backstory on the boot, and I think you've spoken about this. I was listening to one of your I think the Wednesday program, you spoke about this. The boot was dropped probably on November 26th, 2022, and it was dropped from the foot, came, unlodged from the foot of a Norwegian diver whose boat was chartered by the U.S. in November to go investigate these crime scenes. Okay, what's the boat? Its name is escaping me right now, but you talked about it in your last. Oh, the Norman Frontier. So the Norman Frontier is a Norwegian vessel that was chartered by the U.S. right, to go investigate the crime scenes. During that time, one of the divers lost his boot. And it was this boot that we saw. So it has nothing to do with the perpetrators of the crime. But the boot does show something important. And it shows that the US the entire time was saying, well, we trust the German investigation, we trust the Danish investigation, we trust the Swedish investigation, and therefore we're not going to do too much ourselves because these are independent investigations. The US also blocked on 2 occasions the establishment of a independent international investigation that would have been established by the UN Security Council. So at the same time that the U.S. is praising the thoroughness and the thoroughness of these European investigations, they're chartering boats themselves to go investigate the blast sites. So that demonstrates that the U.S. was lying when they said, oh, we're just going to let the Europeans investigate this. Now, I know Joe Biden went on TV and said, we're going to send down divers. But let's remember when Joe Biden said he was going to send down divers. He said that divers were going to be sent down, I think it was 2-3 days after the leaks were detected in the pipelines. And he says, we're going to send down divers. So, but what's ironic about that is when he said that in September 2022, he knew from the Discord leaks, he had already had intelligence, the administration already had intelligence, and the CIA already had intelligence saying that Ukraine was maybe going to try to compromise these going to try to execute an attack on these pipelines. So when he said that in September, and he acted like, well, maybe Russia did it, we're going to send on divers to find out who did it, he knew damn well that either the US did it themselves or Ukraine did it. So the whole thing was a farce and a charade from the outset.
Yeah, let me bring so people are familiar with the site, Jeff. Here, it's important to just explain to people that a lot of people aren't aware. There's actually 4 pipes. You've got Nord Stream 1, you've got Nord Stream 2, and then you've got pipes A and B within each Nord Stream 1 and 2. So there's a total of 4 pipelines. And isn't it interesting as well that how they overlap, Jeffrey, with the exclusive economic zones of Sweden, Denmark, and Germany is also there to the south. Why is this important? Just understanding this layout, Jeff.
Well, it's important for a couple reasons. Like I said, you're correct. There are 2 pipelines, Nord Stream 1 and 2. They each have a line A and B, so there are 4 lines total. They traverse the floor of the Baltic Sea, as your audience can see. They start in Russia, they make landfall in Germany. Okay, so one of the 4 lines was ripped apart southeast of the Danish island of Bornholm. Okay, Then 17 hours later, and approximately 75 kilometers away, or 78 kilometers away, wherever it was, that same line was ruptured again, and 2 other lines began leaking. This time northeast, as you can see on the screen, northeast of the Danish island of Bornholm. And as I said, one line, Nord Stream 2, line B, remains intact. Okay, so that's extremely important to know, because one of those lines, one is the, if it's up to I believe if it's up to some political parties in Germany, they're going to maybe start delivering gas through that one line that's remained intact. The other thing that's very important, as you point out, and I think I knew you were going with this, Patrick, is that, and this again is one of the holes in the Andromeda theory, and I'm not saying the Andromeda theory is wrong, I'm not saying it's right, but it does have major holes in it. One major hole is there are places, these pipelines are 1,200 meters approximately long. There are many places along the pipelines that only have depths of like 20 meters, 25 meters, 30 meters, even 40 meters, the depth of the water. How are the explosions? All of them took place at approximately 80 meters deep. So why in the heck, if you're an amateur diver, when you know that your time is limited, this is a dangerous operation. I talked to a German MP, and he tells me, and this is a German MP, by the way, I can tell you his name is Ralph Stegner. He's quoted on the record, and he is in Scholz's party, which is, an establishment party. And even he says, so I'm paraphrasing now, but he says something like to me, Jeff, this took place in the Baltic Sea. It didn't take place on Mars. This is the most, heavily, surveilled, this is NATO's lake, right? Body of water in the world. So if you're going to blow up pipelines, first of all, why do you blow them up when they're 80 meters deep? Second of all, why do you blow them up 75 to 80 kilometers apart, in 4 different places minimum? And why don't you do it where the pipelines actually cross in some places where the water is much, much more shallow? So those are just some of the, technical holes in the Andromeda theory.
Yeah, and that just to name a few. I mean, you also just bring up some really good points in here later in the article, Jeff, where you sort of poke a few holes in the Wall Street Journal reporting, and it does seem, a little bit. I don't know how to say this. I think you summed it up really well. You said that the sources for this story were kind of served up on a silver plate kind of thing. I mean, it's incredibly convenient how the story fits together. One might suspect that the journalist was given access to people in Ukraine, but how can you prove that what they're telling the journalist? They were the people doing it, that they were there, and they actually did the sabotage. You're really just kind of going on the credibility of this publication and the journalist, aren't you? I think you kind of made that point.
Yes, and and again, I believe in the independent media, Patrick. I, like yourself, am an enormous skeptic of mainstream media. But I do want to emphasize that again, we don't know at this point. We just know that there are a lot more questions than answers. But let me give sort of let me share some technical thing with the audience for a second, and then I'm gonna make a general comment about these mainstream media outlets that have been focusing on the sabotage. So a lot of people have been following the sabotage, and they're kind of wonky about it. They like the technical components. So let me just say this. There were probably 6 explosions, and 3 of the bombs failed to do damage. Okay. We know that the saboteurs, they took advantage of these highly pressurized pipelines to maximize the damage. But because some of the bombs detonated at, like I said, 17 hours after others, when the lines had already been depressurized. In other words, the gas had already escaped. Most of the gas had already escaped from the lines. And by the way, this gas escaped at the speed of sound. Okay. That's how much energy was released. So, because some of the bombs, again, like I said, they detonated 17 hours afterwards. When these lines were ruptured, they were depressurized. So they weren't torn apart in some locations. What does this suggest? It suggests that the timers were off, or they were mistakenly set and they caused, some bombs to be ineffective. And especially one bomb, people who study this, we call this bomb 6. Okay. It wasn't placed on the seam. Now, what do I mean by that? These pipelines have seams. They're actually called field joints. I think in the technical lingo, they're called field joints. And these seams, they're much easier to perforate than the pipelines themselves because they're just made of like a very kind of a rigid polyurethane foam, whereas the pipelines themselves are steel and they have like walls that are something like 4 centimeters in width, and they're coated with another, depending on the place, 6 to 11 centimeters of steel reinforced concrete. So, you know, you're a saboteur. You're on Andromeda. You're an average saboteur. Right in the head. And by the way, this is not difficult to figure out where the seams are. If you go to the Nord Stream AG website and you look at their tech specs, they say where the seams are. Like when we went on our expedition, we knew that we were going. One of the things we wanted to figure out is, were these bombs placed on the seams? This was public information. This wasn't like, you know, oh, they knew about the construction of the pipelines. Not at all. So, you know, you're a saboteur. Why place or, you know, position a bomb and set a timer if you know the explosions wouldn't compromise the line? You know, for example, on Nord Stream 1 line B, there's just a dent in one place. So these questions, you know, I don't understand if these mainstream media outlets, and I was just looking before this interview, I was looking at one of the Der Spiegel pieces, and I don't know if I counted correctly, so I counted quickly, but I believe I counted 19 names on that, in the byline of the article. 19. And they also with the Wall Street Journal. So, I mean, I'm just thinking, you know, I am not a seasoned journalist, but I know people who are, and I'm thinking, my God, you know, some of these independent journalists that I respect and know and I've learned from, if we had 19 people on one story and we were collaborating with the Washington Post, and who knows how many people they have on their stories, and we could be, you know, we had travel budgets and plus we had all, as you said earlier, access to all these European, Ukrainian, American security officials, intelligence officials, military officials. We had access to them. One of the things I would have answered immediately is I would have said, why did the bombs go off 17 hours apart? And I would have presented verifiable evidence for this. So that's kind of a general comment about, you know, if you have this many resources, why aren't you answering some of these fundamental questions in your reporting? I don't understand it.
Well, this was explained. That's a great point you bring up. This is inside baseball of, you know, corporate journalism. And I asked one of our you know, mainstream colleagues years ago about this, and why Washington Post, New York Times, you see these tons of, especially the Post, CNN does it a lot as well, loaded with byline names. And what's going on there? He said that's how you can dilute the responsibility or the accountability in case it's wrong. But he said sometimes the publications are fed stories from the intelligence services, from the military, directly to the editorial desk, and then they'll put junior editors' names on it, or junior journalists' names on it, to give them a byline, to build up their byline. But it's also kind of a poison chalice as well, because if it turns out to be a fraud, then people are disposable at some level in mainstream media, but they need to stick people's names on it, but as many as possible, so that no one person can kind of be held accountable. That's how it was explained to me. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because these aren't long pieces, Jeff. These are like, you know, 500 to 1,000 words in some cases.
Yeah, I completely see your point. Absolutely. There's some of their Spiegel's pieces were quite long. This one I'm talking about today, I didn't know the word count, but just a guesstimation, maybe it was 3,000 to 4,000 words. I don't know. And I know that they have budgets. You know, they've gone to Ukraine. They've allegedly knocked on the guy's door who funded the operation. They've allegedly gone and interviewed all the 6 people who allegedly traveled aboard Andromeda. You know, I mean, they just have so many resources and so many contacts, and they're just some fundamental questions in addition to who actually planted the bombs and who actually funded this, that have not been, you know, irrefutably and verifiably reported. And I'd like to see that, especially since these outlets have, you know, so many resources.
And Jeff, I just want to bring up, you supplied a couple of articles from your Substack that we're going to quickly share. If you can just quickly walk us through these three pieces. Here is the first one. This was up, I think it's June 19th, 2023. This is again up on your Substack, New Revelations from the Nord Stream exhibition. Yeah, just give us a quick SP on these ones.
Sure. Okay. This one is the very first one that I published after our expedition to the blast sites. And the major finding in this one is your audience will see on the screen there. That is a picture of Nord Stream 2 line A in the exclusive economic zone of Sweden. This is probably the most important blast site for doing a forensic analysis. A forensic analysis of the blast site. Why? If you look at that measurement, if I get my readers can fact check me by rereading the article, but if I remember correctly, that hole in the pipeline we're seeing there is only about 1/2 meter wide by 2.5 meters high. Okay. So experts I talked to when I showed them this picture, they were able to do a forensic analysis and tell me how many, what equivalent of TNT in kilograms was used to rupture the pipeline. And why is this? If you look at pictures of this pipeline and you look at pictures of other blast sites, this one looks way different. Why? Because this line was blown up twice. Once 17 hours prior, and then 17 hours later. And by the time it was the second bomb on it exploded, most of the gas had already rushed out of the pipe, and therefore it didn't lift the pipe violently above the seafloor and crack it like a chopstick and leave 50-meter holes in the pipeline. It just left this small little rupture because the damage done to the pipeline was only a result of the explosives themselves, not a combination of the explosives and the massive quick depressurization of the gas. So that's really the big finding in that article. And that again, that debunked the reporting in the New York Times and the Guardian, for example, that said, oh, it was 500 kilograms. No, it was 10% of that, if that.
And you also supplied me with an image of the dent. Does that pertain to that article or another one?
No, the dent is very interesting. The dent, I didn't know about it. Eric didn't know about it. What happened was, and I don't remember what day it was on our expedition, but one of the days on our expedition, the weather was bad. High waves, choppy seas, etc., high winds. And when our sonar went over that part, we just overlooked it. We didn't see the dent in this line. How did we know about the dent publicly? This is fascinating. It's through the documents that Eric and I have shared on our Twitters, or X, whatever you want to call it. These documents, Eric was actually the first person to break this. I don't know if it was Nord Stream AG or it was the insurers. I think it was Nord Stream who proved that one of these lines were damaged. In fact, I don't know what the purpose was, so I don't want to speak too forcefully about that. But it was actually through those potential legal proceedings, pre-trial proceedings, that they released. They talked about the dent, and then Eric went back and looked at our sonar footage and said, geez, there is a dent on this pipeline. So we didn't even know that there was a dent until these documents were released via the British courts.
Yeah, I think this is the piece up on stage. This a little bigger. That's again Jeffrey Brodsky's Substack, ladies and gentlemen. There, breaking Nord Stream pipeline owner qualifies an embarrassing Western insurer's failure to provide evidence for the country behind the sabotage. But yes, this is interesting. Lloyd's of London, and obviously there's all kinds of implications with this, but to really get into the actual details forensic wise, you can't pull a fast one on the courts, Jeff. You might be able to do it in the media and in politics, but not in the courts when there's money involved, right?
No. And again, that embarrassing. Here we have the pipeline's owners, which again, we're only talking about Nord Stream 1 now, because this lawsuit is only about the damage against Nord Stream 1. We have the pipeline's owners who are 49% Western, calling these Western insurers saying it's embarrassing that you think you don't have to pay up because this was, an act of war. However, you're not going to, but you won't even identify the perpetrator. So, I mean, it's frankly, it's pretty humiliating considering, how much propaganda has surrounded this story.
So was that the first indication that of this story of the dent? Again, I'll bring this dent back up on screen if this is the image in question here, Jeffrey.
The first indication of this was actually in the court documents that in those court filings. We had a picture of the dent because there was one of these sonars that you tow behind the boat. So we towed the sonar behind the boat. So like we went up and down the pipelines and we made sure that we found all the damage, but we didn't realize that this was actually, again, not a perforated or a pierced pipeline, but a dent in the line, because it was hard to see that day because of the rough seas and the inclement weather. But then later, Eric went, when we read these court documents, Eric went back and said and found that our sonar actually picked up the dent. Well, we didn't know about it until the court documents. I should say Eric. He broke the story before I did. Till these court documents came out, and Eric, made them public. He made some of them public, some public, but the ones he made public talked about the dent first.
And the implication, of course, there, Jeff, as you mentioned, is that something went off, but it wasn't as deadly of an explosion and didn't sever the pipe, but created a dent. And that plays into the discussion about how many bombs there were. I mean, I know Seymour Hersh has said 8 bombs. There's how many are accounted for, between 6 and 8, based on what I think you've written there. It's uncertain exactly, but the dent is very important, isn't it? This is a really key data point. Go ahead.
3 of the bombs failed to do damage. We know there were at least 6 explosions. There were 6 explosions, probably at least 6. 3 of the bombs failed to do damage. There were probably 7 because one of the bombs did not detonate and was retrieved. And we think it was retrieved, again, by the Norman Frontier, which was chartered, the Norman Frontier Norwegian boat that was chartered by the U.S. when the Norwegian diver lost his boot.
So we're suspecting it was retrieved. We're guessing, or do we know?
Not been retrieved. It's still on the seafloor. It's still there. But we have a picture of it. We didn't retrieve. We took not a picture. Eric recorded it with his with the underwater drone. It's still there. Yeah, it's still there. Yes, and Hersh just talked about 8 bombs. We do not have evidence of 8 bombs, but it doesn't mean that we're not 8, because again, if you just look at it on the surface, it would make sense there were 8, because we're talking about 4 lines, 2 bombs per line. That's 8. However, we don't know. There was some stopovers during the Andromeda voyage. If that's the true voyage, they may have tried to get more supplies to create another bomb. If this was an amateur operation, maybe it's one of the, who knows, there were allegedly traces of HMX, which is octogen. This is a very potent explosive, was found on Andromeda. Maybe there was a malfunction with one of the bombs. We're not sure. But we do know that there were probably 6 explosions and 3 bombs failed to do damage.
And here's your second piece we wanted to share. Sorry, repeat that, please, Jeff.
One of the bombs did not go off and was likely retrieved.
Yep. Yeah, and then again, that's a thread that people need to start pulling on. Very important thread. Oh, so lab analysis is, again, this is Jeffrey Brodsky's Substack. Lab analysis does not detect explosives used in Nord Stream sabotage. Did someone clean up the crime scene? What's this about?
Well, yeah. So there's a picture. That's a picture of me holding one of the. Eric designed a very ingenious contraption. Basically, we sent down a contraption that was able to retrieve soil sediments from the seafloor. Right next to one of the blast sites. We chose the depressurized site because the explosive damage was so much less that, of course, the sea sediment was dispersed, and the rapidly escaping gas dispersed the sediment much less so. We figured that would be the best place to see if we could detect explosives. In the end, no explosives were detected. But as I said previously, we have evidence that Sweden, now we don't know about this crime scene, because the crime scene that the submersible, the guy who drives or who operates the submersible drone, was not this crime scene. It was a different one. But we do have evidence that at least at one of the crime scenes, one of the blast sites, Sweden blocked off access to the sites, especially blocked off Russian to the sites. And I interviewed, and it's in the article, I interviewed a legal scholar who said that was a blatant violation of international law. And just by the way, about Sweden, we should say this about Sweden. So Sweden conducts an investigation. Before their investigation, they block off the blast site, saying, well, it's in our economic zone, it's our jurisdiction, so Russia and other vessels, you can't access the crime scenes. But then, X number of months later, so they block off the crime scenes in October, and I think they concluded their investigation in February up to 2023. So, or no, it took more than a year. Was this February? Yeah. Was it February 2024 or 23? I don't remember. I think it was February 24. Okay. And when they conclude their investigation, what do they say? They say, well, we don't have jurisdiction over the matter, and therefore we can't say anything more. So the sequence of events is the following. They block off the crime scenes because they say it's their jurisdiction and their exclusive economic zone, in gross violation of international law. And then when they conclude their investigation, they say, well, it's beyond our jurisdiction. So which is it? So getting back to this blast site was not the blast site. I'm sure they cleaned up all the blast sites, but this one was not the one that I have conclusive evidence that they removed parts of the pipeline and debris from. But this was the blast site that we thought it was most prudent to collect our soil samples, because again, this was the depressurized site. That picture that I showed, that was only a hole in the pipeline, only about 1/2 meter by 2.5 meters. And therefore, because the explosive was much less powerful there, because the gas had already exploded, Eric correctly thought this would be the best place to try to collect the soil sediments. But they never ended up detecting anything. There's a whole backstory to that. If you want, I can talk about it. If we're running over time, we can skip the backstory. Up to you.
I just want to also get through to this piece as well. This is again up at Jeffrey Brodsky's Substack. What is and what isn't known about the Nord Stream sabotage? The public is still in the dark about the attack on the pipelines that transformed Russian transferred Russian natural gas to Europe across the Baltic Sea. Will the Swedish prosecutors switch on the light? So both Denmark and Sweden, and I think you kind of allude to this, of course, in your writing, Jeffrey, both Denmark and Sweden basically conducted this investigation and then basically shut it down. And between them and Germany, nothing has really been disclosed to the public. And of course, what's this doing, Jeffrey? It's fueling a lot more speculation, so your thoughts?
Well, yeah, they can, obviously, I mean, they complain about, misinformation and outright disinformation that's complained about. And I think that's a problem too. But, the best way to, combat this disinformation is to I would say just tell the truth, but not just, tell the truth or it's present irrefutable, verifiable evidence of your claims, whether you're a journalist, a lawyer, or a politician, or anybody else. So yeah, this piece that you're showing now, Patrick, I would encourage readers, if they're interested, to read some of my later articles, because this piece was written, I don't remember the exact date on it, but it's
November 2023, I think.
Yeah, so that was what was known up to that point, in terms of, the amount of explosives used, what was said about the Danish, Swedish investigations, what was said publicly, what we know, what forensic things we know about how the sabotage operation was executed, et cetera, et cetera. It's a little bit dated now, that piece.
Yep. So again,
a lot more has come to light. I've written about it.
great resources again, which are up on Jeffrey Brodsky's Substack here. And this one I want to share with you as well, Jeff. I'm just going to bring up some part of this, which I think is really worth looking at here. We published this at 21st Century Wire just on Friday. Is Nord Stream 2 back in business? On January 28th, 2025, energy a permit age of Russia's Gazprom, allowing for the preservation of Nord Stream 2 pipeline material in the Baltic Sea. And so basically it's like for environmental reasons, environmental safety, plugging two ends, basically stealing two ends of the pipeline. That's what they're doing. But what's really interesting here, Jeffrey, is Danish age for world line site here. Obviously, it's a time limit on it. You know, the work has to be done with time. And if we bring this up on here, we interesting details, you know, really precise details about the pipeline, about the engineering, about the conditions of the pipeline, and of course, even the actual specs here. So it's a very good resource, and a hat tip to Freddie Ponton at 21st Century Wire for translating this for us and posting it. So really, this just out on the 20th. So I think we had this on the so it's this is very interesting. So Jeff, like the Lloyds of London case here, I mean, this kind of means in a way Russian parties have access to the site. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot, Jeffrey, on this. If Russian parties have access to data collection and who knows what do you think they could potentially also find? Your professional opinion on this. Just speculate if you have to, Jeff, but go ahead.
Yeah, sure. No, I will not duck the question, of course. Let me just say one thing just to clarify, because there's a lot of Nord Stream geeks out there like I am, and I want to make sure that I provide accurate analysis. So again, you know, there were 6 blasts and there were 3 failed bombs. One of the bombs was maybe dropped by one of the saboteurs, so there may have been 7 bombs. So we probably have evidence for 7 bombs, but not 8, at least not at this point. Okay. Right. To answer your question about Russia, you know, Patrick, no, I won't say. I won't say. I'm going to speculate. This is just speculation. I don't know, but one of the things I don't understand about Russia in general. First of all, I've never been to Russia, but there are two things I'll say. Talking to one of my sources, okay, one of my sources communicates with I believe he was a senior reporter of Russian TV1. Maybe you can correct me on this.
Russia
one
One,
of the
yeah.
major, okay, one of the major Russian television stations. And my understanding is that Russians watch this station. That it's, you know, I think my source said it was like, you know, bigger than like CNN or something.
Yeah, it's like the BBC equivalent for Russia. Yeah.
Okay. So it's major, and he's a senior reporter. Okay. And he's interested in Nord Stream. So, and he's, by the way, I think he's been recently, his visa was recently withdrawn. And I think he was based, I think, in Berlin, and he's had to go back to Russia, is my understanding. So, and he has major contacts and sources. And he says, the Russian government doesn't leak information. They don't say about Nord Stream. They don't say what they know and what they don't know. And maybe you can interpret that in a lot of ways, but one way you can interpret that is, oh, maybe they're running a tight ship. Maybe they're really professionals and they don't leak anything to reporters. The other way you can interpret that is that, well, I don't know, but they don't even leak things that would benefit them, in my opinion. Like, I don't remember, you might more than I do because I didn't follow the stories much, but one of the bridges, or was it maybe one of the power plants in Ukraine, one of the bridges was, I think one of the power plants was clearly attacked by Ukraine. And this was maybe in the beginning of the war. And Russia allowed the mainstream media to just say, oh, Russia did this. Russia's jeopardizing lives by, attacking nuclear power plants and stuff like that. And Russia knew for sure and had verifiable evidence that it was Ukraine. And they didn't present it in the United Nations Security Council. They didn't publish images or documents or anything that would have cleared their name. So,
Jeff, let me just speak to that for a moment. They're notoriously, and there's so much criticism within Russia about how non-media savvy the government is. Syria, the Syrian government problem as well. I mean, it really tragic how bad they are at public relations, but they don't do the kind of leak, counterattack, all that stuff we're kind of used to, how this stuff plays out, mainstream media, and it becomes part of government strategy of communication, laundering information, false leads, and all that. We have in the West over the lifespan of the mainstream media, totally different in post-Soviet Russia. So yeah, I think that's part of it. Maybe not all of it, but it might be part of it. Jeff, go ahead.
Right. And to answer your question, so your question is basically, well, what can Russia garner by accessing these sites? Well, I think that's an excellent question, and even a further question is, they have surveillance technology. They're a major world power. These are $20 billion pipelines that were important to them and gave them billions of dollars of revenue per year. They likely know exactly who did this. So present the evidence. It's very strange. And the last thing I'll say is I was talking to one of my sources, and this is probably my most high level source, this person. This person is so high level that the day or the day after, around the couple days when Nord Stream blew up, this person called the former prime minister of Sweden on the phone, just friendly, and said, what the heck is going on? Former prime minister of Sweden says to this person, I'm just glad I'm not in politics anymore. I'm not in government anymore, something to that effect. And this person has also told me off the record several times, lamenting the fact that it appears that Russia does not defend its own interests. And it's a real head scratcher to me. So I don't know. And I know you know much more.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll add this as well. The way Russians look at geopolitics, and it's taken me over a decade to work this out. And then, having visited the country and speaking to journalists there, talking to people in, foreign affairs and the national security community there, they have a totally different timeline horizon for any issue. It's the same with Chinese, but the Russians are looking at this sort of broader timeline. So while they could know everything about Nord Stream and who did it, they might even have evidence that could completely blow the whole thing open. They're looking at everything as leverage for them. So to them, it's bigger than Nord Stream. It's the existence of NATO. It's the war in Ukraine. It's Turkey and Syria and Iran and the Pacific Rim as well, and those security issues. It's interballistic missile treaties. All of these things. Everything has leverage attached to it, and they're kind of on the defensive. Russia and America and NATO are more on the offensive. So I think this is why they probably play their poker so tight to their chest, because they're thinking, how could this be useful for us for the next thing that we're trying to negotiate? But yeah, it's a different mindset, totally different mindset, I think, than what many of us, even Russians, are baffled by it, by the way. It's not just us asking these questions. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I don't have much more to say on that. I mean, it's just a different cultural mindset, a different view of geopolitics, different, I mean, maybe it's positive. Maybe they're thinking about a larger picture. What do they want geopolitics? What do they want their strategy? What do they want, their sphere of influence to look like in X number of years? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's because here in the West, and especially Americans, we instant gratification culture. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, again, we just got a minute or two left, and I want to give a good shout out to, your platforms as well, Jeffrey, here. Again, just a reminder, Substack, Jeffrey Brodsky here, New Revelations from a Nord Stream Expedition, and you'll see some of his later stuff there. Plus, he's got some excellent pieces. Well, we've got this one where we're at 21st Century Wire as well. I want to direct people to that. This is great. There's great links in here as well that will take you around to other resources. He mentioned Eric Anderson's work as well, the great engineer, and who's done tremendous work there, who Jeffrey accompanied on that first independent kind of underwater expedition, if you will. And here is the Twitter account for Jeffrey Brodsky. Sorry, X. I'm still in the old mode. X, formerly Twitter, there, Jeffrey Brodsky 5. You can dial him up there on X as well. And then if you go to his X account, you'll have the links to his Substack as well. So those are your links there. Just your final thoughts. I know there's a lot to, I mean, we are only scratching the surface. This is a real cursory discussion that we're having. We're really just kind of doing a broad overview and hitting some things that hopefully people will be, interested in and, delve into it themselves, either through 21 Wire, Jeffrey's piece there, which is up, and also his Substack. And then obviously the other independent journalists that we mentioned, Eric Anderson and others. Freddie Ponton has also done some interesting and in-depth research on this very topic at 21st Century Wire. So there's a lot of great resources out there, Jeffrey, and just give us your final thoughts on this story in general. Where do you think it's at? Where do you think it might be going in the near future? Go ahead.
For the truth to finally come out, there's some hope in the new German elections. I know that Sarah Wagenknecht is pretty serious about this. So maybe if she gets enough representation in Parliament, she can, effectuate something positive. But I tend to agree with you, Patrick. I think that this is just, I think the ball is just starting to be rolled here on this, because hopefully the war in Ukraine will come to an end and the violence will come to an end, and then hopefully more of the truth will come out. So, look what's happening in Ukraine, because Nord Stream can't be separated from the war in Ukraine, and look what happens maybe in the German elections. The other thing is I want to say another independent researcher who is spectacular. His name is Michael Cobbs.
Yes.
Michael Cobbs, he also has done some incredible Nord Stream stuff. I linked some of his work in the piece. Other thing is that I know there's a lot of Nord Stream geeks out there. So we just did a cursory discussion here. Yeah. So, please maybe read the full article. And also I'm available. My DMs are open on Twitter. So if people have comments or questions, or they want to correct me in something, I'm happy to hear their insight. You can also email me. I'm available. And that's it, pretty much. Thank you a ton for inviting me on your show. It's been great.
Yeah. And again, we hopefully will open the door to some future discussions on this topic. It's vast. We have really just grazed it today in the last 90 minutes. So, and again, let's point people up on screen here to this fantastic piece here by Jeffrey Brodsky at 21stcenturywire.com. Exclusive: former Ukrainian commander-in-chief can be prosecuted for role in a Nord Stream pipeline sabotage, opening the door for what could be a diplomatic and geopolitical chess match. But the details of the status of all the investigations and what's known and not known is actually contained in this great piece, in-depth piece here, published and written by Jeffrey Brodsky up at 21stcenturywire.com. So I encourage people to go there. Jeffrey, thank you very much for your time, and go ahead.
Sorry, Patrick, there's just one more thing. First of all, thank you for those kind words. And it's been an honor to work for 21st Century Wire. I want to say one more thing. If there's anyone listening who's more comfortable reading in Spanish, my articles are always published also in Spanish. They're published for a newspaper here in Spain and a website here in Spain. It's called Diario 16. And you can also read all my work in Spanish. I have a wonderful editor there named Bea Talegon, and she does my editing there in Spanish. I write the piece in Spanish, and then she corrects anything she sees. And so that's if people are more interested in reading in Spanish, they're also available in Spanish. That's really it. But
and that can be accessed. That can be accessed via your X Twitter feed, right?
Yeah, it'll be the artist formerly known as Twitter, currently X. It's there.
Okay, yeah, encourage people. Great bilingual resource as well. Jeffrey Brodsky, independent journalist, writer, author, and of course, doing great work on the subject of the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. Thank you very much for joining us on the Sunday Wire this week. There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. That is Jeffrey Brodsky. I'll tell you what we're going to do right now. We're going to take a break here at the Alternate Current Radio Network. And when we come back, we're going to be joined by a couple of our colleagues. Hesher and Ruckus are in the house. A couple of major stories breaking. We're going to cover those. So controversy is coming after the break, I guarantee it. So in the meantime, enjoy the music of Joseph Arthur. We'll be right back after these messages.
Gratitude, the antidote. The world is built on fear. The evil world we live in wants our soul to disappear. But gratitude, salvation, and never-ending light that transcends all the darkness trying to hold us to the night. Thoughts say what is missing. Thank you says what's here. Thoughts keep us unconscious. Thank you makes it clear. Back into the moment, the vast eternal now, where God is always with us and holy like a cow, like a sunrise or a child or a garden full of roses. The mind misses the magic and considers all the poses. Why our thoughts against us, principalities of air, whispering indifference on foundations of despair. So thank you is my mantra, mantra. Na 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 na. Thank you is my mantra, mantra. Who set up this funhouse, this journey for our soul, where most never make it and lose all their control? How do we get back any sovereignty from the lies of demons that we pretend to be? Thank you is a pass to a place outside of hell. Gratitude and presence will lift us where we fell, but we have to make a practice to come back into now, in the garden of our gratitude, and push that ancient plow. I don't know the reason we are in a holy war, how we ever come back to who we were before. Did it start in Eden with an apple and a snake? Since then, have we been falling with this battle as our fate? So thank you is my mantra, mantra. Na 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 na. Thank you is my mantra, mantra. The world will light us, and so will our minds, so will our minds. Whatever is the reason, this is where we are. The light and the darkness are aiming for our heart. The light wants us present in the clutch of gratitude. The darkness wants us scattered with an evil attitude. And we look at the thinking that justifies the course. We see it's thought itself that brings on the divorce. From the Holy Spirit, from revelations bloom, from the love of God to the darkness of the tomb. Voices of all demons we identify as us, and then we follow lies, the wrong voices that we trust. Take us to destruction, take us to despair, when the gift of God himself has always just been here. So thank you is my mantra, mantra. Na 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 na. Thank you is my mantra, mantra. Thank you is my mantra, mantra. Na 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 na. Thank you is my mantra, mantra.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Sunday Wire. This episode 533 of this weekly omnibus news and analysis radio program. Great track by Joseph Arthur. Thank you is my mantra. Filmed on location, I think in Paris or Toulouse or something. I'm not sure, but great, great music video there. Joseph is an incredible artist. We feature his work. He's also very awake politically on many different levels, spiritually and otherwise. Really appreciate him giving his great music for us to share, his art to share with our audience here at 21stcenturywire.com. Fantastic segment with Jeffrey Brodsky. Again, the article's up at 21stcenturywire.com. Exclusive. Former Ukrainian commander-in-chief can be prosecuted for the role in the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. And whether you believe in the Ukrainian super soldier, crazy diver, Andromeda plot or not, the point is the fact that the mainstream's running with this story and has been running it with it opens up illegal diplomatic international law can of worms for all the NATO member states and Ukraine as well. And it might even prompt Zelensky to do some palace intrigue as well. And who knows, revoke the diplomatic immunity of Zaluzhniy, London, because him as potential competition for, you know, whatever the coming elections or the coup that might be planned to basically oust this little clown who's, let's face it, folks, days are numbered. The dwarf king in Kiev, the days are well and truly numbered. But again, I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. We'll have Jeff on hopefully in the future to talk more about Nord Stream. It's a vast, hugely complex topic. I mean, Freddie Ponton spoke about some aspects of it on Wednesday during our midweek 21 Wire live broadcast. Again, first time we've done that program. So we'll be doing that hopefully weekly. We got a great midweek wire lined up this week. It's going to be amazing. I think we're going to have Freddie Ponton and Mats Nilsson on, and we're going to talk about the other pipeline that got blown up before. Oh, did you not know? Yes. And was the U.S. intelligence involved? Yes, they were. This is a piece of history that nobody knows about. So to call this a fluke, I'm afraid not. Let me bring up on stage some of the ACR alternate current radio team here. Bryan McClain, a.k.a. Hesher. I don't know, Hesher, have you managed to catch any of that Brodsky interview? I mean, this is a really deep topic. Obviously, we just scratched the surface. You can get it. You can really nerd out on the Nord Stream. Trust me. I've spent many hours on it and discussing it with Freddie Ponton as well. Just give us your general thoughts, and we'll bring Ruckus up into the room as well. Go ahead, Andrew. Thank you for this, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I caught that. That was a great conversation. You know, it just begs so many questions. It's like, well, what happens next? You know, I mean, all this stuff has been found out between, you know, Jeffrey's work and Freddie's work, Cy Hirsch. You know, there's just so much information out there, and it's like, well, what's going to be done with it? You know, are we just going to carry on? I mean, it seems most likely to me that, you know, no matter how much journalism is done on this, the mainstream narrative shall remain. And I think that's the most frustrating part about it for me. It's like that narrative is broken. It's been, you know, provedly broken. And we're, I guess, as a society, as a world, we're supposed to just, you know, pretend that we don't know that. That's what mainstream's going to do, clearly, is just, you know, continue to run cover. I thank you for outlining that tactic about how mainstream journalists will do that. You know, they'll pack byline with, you know, multiple people, tens of people in some cases. I mean, what a shady, low level yet brilliant tactic that the mainstream uses. You know, and that's one of the things that keeps driving us back to the microphone is, you know, can we wrestle these narratives away from these creatures that want to give us a false reality? So, you know, that's the part I want some accountability for. Like, you know, is all this, you know, thousands of hours of work gonna just disappear into some, you know, hole, while a false history is, you know, what we're left with, or not? You know, how do we, as, citizen journalists, as viewers, as citizens, as people of Earth, like, what is the correct response to this sort of, narrative chicanery?
Well, there's just ask Elon Musk. Oh, I had to do it once. It's almost going to just be a tradition. I'm going to get a sound effect with this, by the way. I'm going to run it as an animated stinger. So you guys wait for that.
When do we
Ruckus.
get a T-shirt, Patrick? That's all I want to know.
Yeah, you do. Well, design one for us, Ruckus. I'd love to put
I'm
it up
on
for
it.
sale
All right.
on a drop
Sorry.
ship. I mean, you are the media. I mean, it's got to be really dark and black-pilled, twisted sort of design with lots of irony, dripping with irony.
I have a few ideas. I've thought about this endlessly, about making designs and parody themed merchandise just around Elon Musk's "You Are the Media," and then of course you were pointing to the attention how now X is the #1 news source or some baloney like that. So that tells you everything right there. I mean, it's the new media is the same as the old media. It's just in a different place now, led by different people that look cooler, but happen to be richer and more influential. Imagine that. Neat. But yeah, how's it going, guys? How's it going?
Yeah, just on that point, I actually Elon did it again. We're the news app on in all these, and I replied to him and I said, "You're not the #1 news app. The #1 news porn on." Than there is actual news, just pointing out that sort of fact. It's not a dedicated news app, but this is like, we're living in the age of charlatans. Nobody cares. I mean, this is the richest guy, biggest platform, doesn't care what he says, just put it out there. And it's almost like he's making Alex Jones look like a diligent journalist. Like, if you compare Elon Musk, he's making Alex Jones look like a Pulitzer diligent fact-checking journalist. That's how bad Elon Musk is.
Well, they want to give Elon Musk the Nobel Peace Prize now too. I don't know if you caught that wind of that.
For what? For
his free speech stance, because he's I'm not kidding. I saw this somewhere.
Well, it's it is clownish, but actually he's probably more deserving of it than Barack Obama was in 2009 when they gave it to him before he did anything as president. They said they gave it to encourage world peace. Of course, how did that go? Not too well. He started like 7 new wars during his 2 terms. Or Al Gore got one for basically, for what? Raising the alarm about global warming, right?
Well, I might remind the listeners, in case you didn't know, Alfred Nobel, before he started his Peace Prize thing, he was known as the Merchant of Death. So perhaps Elon Musk deserves this award after all because of his ties with the military-industrial complex. Just saying.
Maybe they'll give it to him for his role in extending the Ukrainian war by providing what he calls the communication backbone of the Azov battalions and all the Ukrainian nationalist forces on the front line, many of whom have ended up in body bags as a result of this war of attrition. He seems very proud of the fact that he provided the backbone of the Ukrainian front line, and he was very public about it. So maybe that deserves a Nobel Prize, because what is his name? Alfred Nobel? What was the he'd be proud of Elon's work there, keeping the war going.
Maybe they'll give it to Donald Trump instead, since he ended the war within 24 hours of taking office, just like he promised. Oh, crap. I guess we're still waiting on that.
Yeah, we're still waiting on that. By the way, how's that going? I mean, it seems like everyone's evading that right now. The only person, this kills me to say this, by the way, and I will probably eat my words, because in politics, these people will get your hopes up one week and they will dash them the next. You've seen it happen so many times. You said, "Oh my gosh, that's what I wanted to hear," and the next week they're wanting to overthrow like the Chinese government or something, or threatening to send nukes into Indonesia or something. Marco Rubio was waxing on about a multipolar world and how we need to adjust and get used to a multipolar world, and that you can't have a unipolar hegemon like the United States running riot forever. I mean, this is Rubio, the Secretary of State. And I was like, am I listening to Alexander Dugin here or Marco Rubio? I couldn't work it out. But then I'm like, how long is this You know, he's enticing us into having a love affair with Rubio. But how long till that till that lover dashes your hopes and dreams next week by doing something insane? This is the problem with politics, guys. I really don't want to put my hope into anybody. We're so jaded and black-pilled after these years that I can't trust anybody. And I'm getting a lot of stick from MAGA and from Elon bots, and Tommy bots hate me. But they're saying, Pat, why don't you say something encouraging about, you know, Elon or RFK? RFK was praising Operation Warp Speed this week. Did you guys see the Senate confirmation hearings?
Yeah, the RFK stuff was like, come on. I mean, he backpedaled so many things there. I mean, there was a lot of you know, chagrin to enjoy with the you know, Bernie and the rest of, you know, the crew up there sort of melting down over him. But when it came to his performance, I was not shocked at all to see him be, you know, say nice things about warp speed, to say, yeah, we'll potentially be cool with mRNA shots for bird flu, you know, which indicates he's going to be totally cool with this Stargate project also. You know, talking about supporting the vax schedule for children. Are you kidding me? Like, you just took years and years, I don't even know how many man hours of work on that topic that was done at Children's Defense Network, and just completely scrapped it. Like, what the heck was that? If I was on the board at Children's Health Defense, I would just be, you know, buzzing right now. We would be having a lot of meetings about how to try to repair the damage that, you know, the former key player had in that whole you know, set of work. That's that body of work that exists at Children's Health Defense Network. What are you talking about? I mean, was it you do that much work on a project like that is that important, and then scrap it all so that you can get confirmed? I mean, this is really, you know, you know, I've been done with him since October 10th, but of you know, 2023. But at this point, it's just like, come on, man. Like, how are people defending him at this point?
Good question, Hesher. And before I get Ruckus to weigh on that, I put a highlight reel together of Robert F. Kennedy, because he's taking a skit on this one. I can't think of anybody that could really outdo this guy. Basically, I recommend that the children follow the CDC vaccine schedule. How many vaccines are there on that schedule? Well, I kind of did a check, and in most states, it's something between 56 and 70 jabs before the age of 5 years old. 5. So this is a guy that campaigned against vaccines, was the champion against big pharma. As Hesher said, Children's Health Defense made it their mission, basically. And then all of a sudden, he's pro-vaccine. Listen to this. Let me see if this goes.
Jerry, would you recommend that parents get vaccinated against
HPV? I recommend that children follow the CDC schedule. CDC schedule, get in there. I'm fortunate to confirm.
Would you recommend that parents get their children vaccinated against the measles? Yes or no?
Against measles? Yes.
I just remind everybody that, Jerry, would you recommend that parents?
So, I mean, guys, did I just hear that correctly?
Yeah.
Children's schedule, the thing that he has been railing against for years, and measles. He's the one who basically rubbished the whole thing about vaccinating against measles because it's not a deadly disease. And why do mass vaccinations for something that's not a pandemic? And so here he is, flip-flopped. Why has he done this?
I don't know. It certainly isn't about making America healthy again. You know, I mean, it would be an interesting exercise to reread his books and some of his posts and broadcasts at Children's Health Defense Network. If they're still on the website, I'm wondering, might also be an interesting exercise to go and see what's been expunged from that website at this point. But to go through his books and look at some of the things that he's written and the evidence, that he's provided for why he's saying what he's saying, and go through it with a red highlighter and find all the parts that now don't match up with what he's saying up there in the confirmation hearing.
Ruckus, did he throw Children's Health Defense and mothers with children with autism under the bus?
It seems that way, especially. I mean, there were a lot of interesting exchanges between him and, say, Bernie Sanders. Are you supportive of these onesies? That's great. That's wild. That's so important. But it kind of is. I mean, it opened my eyes. I'm like, maybe what you were just saying there, Bryan, is that what he said on Children's Health Defense. Well, I don't know how often he was actually writing or saying things on there, but he sanctions that website. He owns that website, but he's not necessarily involved with it 100%, and knows what's going on all the time. You know what I mean? It's just like anything. So, but I mean, and then Elizabeth Warren, she was going hard and accusing him of wanting to shut down vaccines, and he was being defensive. He could have just, stood his ground about a few things here and there. But yeah, people are curious about his actual motives. And then that guy, yeah, go ahead and play that one if you have a clip.
Well, this is a special one, basically. So the one thing that Children's Health Defense basically railed against more than anything was Operation Warp Speed. I think we can all agree this was, the biggest thing that they were campaigning against. What an absolute travesty. I called it a crime against humanity. Millions and millions maimed. And some died as a result of the rollout of this experimental toxic shot, this gene jab. So, and here's RFK put on the spot, Senate hearings, and has a chance. It's not as if the vaccines are popular. I mean, come on. He had a chance. He had the platform here. He could have really, really sent terror down the spines of Big Pharma, but instead we got this. Listen.
I do have a question for you on Project Warp Speed. We supported the CARES Act. We had 97 people in the U.S. Senate vote for it. Everybody here. There's only one member of Congress that voted against it, I believe. And Project Warp Speed had CDC, FDA, NIH, and BARDA very much in the mix. Now, some people think that you're going to come in here and insert yourself into those agencies in a way that's never been done before. Let's say that they're a part of a future Project Warp Speed. Is it your intent to go in and do something that's never been done before, based on my staff's research, and insert yourself in a discussion that the scientists are dealing with in those different agencies?
No, Senator. What I want to do is, I'm not a scientist. I want to empower scientists. I want to make sure that science is unobstructed by vested or economic interests.
That's good.
I got that culture. And I'll just say about Operation Warp Speed, it was an extraordinary accomplishment, demonstration of leadership by President Trump. When he promoted Operation Warp Speed, he was looking at all of the different remedies, including vaccines,
therapeutics, everything.
Therapeutic, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, famotidine, even chlorine dioxide. And he was not looking at shutting down our country for the year, forcing people to wear masks for a year, forcing.
I can't take it anymore. Trump didn't exactly stop the lockdowns and the masks and all the mandates. I mean, he just kind of went with it, like said, oh, well, let's put Fauci and Deborah Birx up there. They'll take care of it. Got the generals over here, got the health experts over here. It's not my call. That's what kind of Trump did. It was kind of a matador in 2020. Maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I loved how RFK pivoted quickly away from vaccines to therapeutics. Did you catch that?
And he said he's not a scientist. Remember the whole I'm not a biologist thing, and now we've got the I'm not a scientist thing.
I'm not a scientist, but he claims to be an expert on the lab leak theory. So he's not a scientist, but you should listen to him about what was the latest one he said, that Chinese and blacks don't need to get vaccinated because they have better immune systems than us. Or Ashkenazi Jews, he got in trouble for this, by the way. The Jewish lobby jumped all over him. He said Ashkenazi Jews have a gene that keeps them from getting COVID or something. I don't know what it was, but and he says there's a whole chain of Polish scientific peer-reviewed studies. He's all over the place, this guy. He's literally bouncing around like a ping pong ball. So I think he's a train wreck. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't get on the worshiping RFK Maha bandwagon. I can't do it, guys.
No, me neither. Me neither, man. And like that guy said, what about another Project Warp Speed, basically? And the right answer to that question was, we're not doing another Project Warp Speed. That stuff is dangerous. Or maybe we could do one if the science is actually proper and transparent. None of this, computer model of a microscopic, nanomicroscopic particle that nobody can look at, that's been bombarded with, snot and poison and other stuff to try to pull something out of it in a PCR test so they can claim that there's some kind of pandemic happening when there isn't. So, like that's the answer that should have been given to that. None of this, this is beyond mealy mouth, this pathetic response of like leaving the door open for Warp Speed 2.0, which, is exactly what we talked about when they announced Project Stargate. Is this Warp Speed 2.0? Heck yeah, it is. They're telling you it is. You've got people in the Senate and in the Congress, asking about, well, isn't Warp Speed 2 going to be great? You're not going to stand in the way of Warp Speed 2, are you? That would be awful. And it's like, who thinks this way? Who buys this? Even the most, mainstream of MAGA conservatives are not, like, as you mentioned, this stuff is not popular with them. They were very much against it while the whole time Biden was in office, pretty much, at least 2 years of it, maybe more if they were paying attention. And it's like, this seems to be one of the big things that just gets dropped off the accountability menu for Trump himself, now for RFK Jr., for the Trump administration. Make America healthy again. My goodness, are you kidding me? We're going to go back to concepts of 2020 and 2021 when everybody in the MAGA crowd knows what a grift that was, or at least potentially what a grift that was. I mean, and now we've got the White House coming out and confirming, I'm using my radio air quotes for those just listening, confirming that this was a Wuhan lab leak, which, we over here know is just another fake alternate story that has its own geopolitical benefits for those that are in power, those that want to perpetuate war and tyranny and authoritarianism. So, open goals just completely missed, and open goals for the MAGA crowd to hold their president responsible for this stuff, and his new picks responsible for potential new stuff. And that you just don't hear it. And as soon as we say it, we get the MAGA crowd mad at us. They want to throw their excuses around as to why we should forgive Donald Trump for this. Why it's okay that RFK Jr. is saying these things. Oh, just the 4D chess. Well, we just need to get him confirmed, and then things will get in. And
yeah, that's what they're saying, Hesher.
Right?
Let him get in first. Patrick Henningsen, I follow you and I love your work, but why are you such a downer on RFK? Let him get in first. Listen, if you're caving during the confirmation hearings, you're going to do nothing in the bureaucracy. Newsflash: HHS is a career graveyard. Name me one previous HHS secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, put your answers in the chat box. I can't name one. It's a career graveyard. That's why they put RFK in there. This is how Washington works. I was trying to explain this to people, but they don't get it. So yeah, lab leak, basically this idea that RFK has been pushing and others, that there was a secret super virus leaked out of Wuhan, that basically bolsters the whole fake pandemic narrative, that there was this novel SARS-CoV-2 ravaging around the planet, and then we kind of had to lock down, and we kind of had to do all this stuff, and we sort of needed to do warp speed, even though the vaccines were a bit rushed. That's what lab leak does. And this fact the CIA are pushing it should be like the red flag of red flags, but everybody's saying no, it's okay. They think it's legitimate because Mark Zuckerberg censored it for like 60 days in March and April of 2020, and therefore that automatically means it's true. This is how stupid people are. I know people that say there was a virus. I'm saying, why? How do you know? Well, I had something. I had it, and my girlfriend had it, and it was really bad. It was really bad. I'm sure there was a virus, and it wasn't like the flu. So, okay, so no excess deaths. So if it was a real super virus, why did they have to fake all the birth certificates and jack up the PCR to create fake data? Well, actually, they released it, but it wasn't as deadly as they hoped. So that it was released, a lab leak, but it was a weak one. And I'm like, I feel like Mary Lou Retton on the balance beam doing some gymnastics here, folks. Forget about it. I know, trying to explain this to people, especially MAGA people, they don't get it. The science, when you get into this twisted scientific arguments, that this is where people get lost. And if you can run propaganda through these biotech narratives, you can really bamboozle millions of people like overnight. And that's kind of what happened. I know we're treading over old ground here, folks, but I'll got to show you a real doozy in a moment. But any comments, Ruckus, on this?
Well, you're not buying the Chinese lab leak theory. I got a better one. I got a better one for you. Any of the MAGA who are on the fence with that, they're like, now wait a minute. I tell you what, though, I have it on an unnamed source. I saw it on X, of course, that from citing somebody that they know who lives next to a CIA officer. They overheard this, of course, so it's news. But according to the CIA, apparently, allegedly, it was Hamas who released the COVID virus.
I heard that one
China
too.
was just a red herring, everybody.
Yeah, it was Hamas. Yeah, they hate us for our freedoms. They hate us for their way of life. You know the drill, guys. So here's a doozy. I'm sure you're going to appreciate this. So here's Robert F. Kennedy. I thought I'd bring this out from the archive. June 12th, 2024. It's not that long ago, is it? And what did he say? H5N8 bird flu vaccine shipping to EU. Up to 40 million doses of an untested vaccine designed for a disease that does not exist. Okay, that's the key words. Designed for a disease that does not exist. I actually believe, I agree with him wholeheartedly from his previous statement, but that was his previous statement, guys. And unfortunately, being the flexible, malleable, Gumby type character that RFK Jr. is, he has fully adjusted this position for the Senate hearings. So now he's saying, that she's pressing him here, Senator Murray. I think she's saying, what about a bird flu vaccine? Will you back that? Do you support something for the avian flu or whatever? Which is basically the next fake pandemic that these people are basically ginning up for another round. And Moderna has already parked. They've got their product parked already. The shareholders are just salivating over the idea of announcing a bird flu pandemic. I mean, there's literally hundreds of billions of dollars in free cash windfall ready to rock. Here's what RFK said, and bear in mind the previous statement. He said, a disease that doesn't exist. Well, here he is this week.
Will you support the development and distribution of vaccines for the avian flu? Yes or no?
Will I, for the avian flu? Yes.
This guy's too much. He's too much.
An old yes. What the heck is that? Not even a caveat. Could we at least have a caveat? Yes, but I want to see test results. Yes, but no emergency use authorization. Yes, but no requirements for travel or work or school. Like, where's our caveats for our 4D chess fans?
No, here's the key, guys. Watch the body language on this. I've been watching RFK. He is so disingenuous. He shrugged his shoulders. He's literally terrified. He's terrified of like his image, his sort of, hero image or whatever he's cultivating. And you can see the body language. Whenever he's asked a question about vaccines, he goes tense. So he doesn't want to own it. So he's going halfway. He's doing the Washington swamp thing. Well, if you go halfway in the swamp, literally, they will alter your DNA and you will become a swamp creature. It's like the Borg in Star Trek. And what I've seen with RFK, He's got a sniff of power. He is just, it's too seductive for him. The power, the money, the chicks, all of that. You know, he is basically, oh, I've got to get in there. I got to get a seat at the inner circle. He enjoyed the seat on Trump's jet. He's there at the, you know, the Elon and Donald, Don Jr. in the Trump jet. He was loving that. So imagine with the security detail, all the rest of it. Watch the body language, though, again, guys, when he's asked the question. And he's basically waffling. It's like he's thinking about something to say that he doesn't actually believe. Listen, look at this again.
Will you support the development and distribution of vaccines for the avian flu? Yes or no?
Will I, for the avian flu? Yes.
So I'm not convinced. I honestly, I don't think he knew what he was going to say. And he just thought, wow, that's a safe out. And let's cave. Let's cave to my earlier positions, because he's been doing it on all the other points. Might as well just throw in, fold like a cheap Walmart deck chair, basically. Or Costco.
Maybe he's just lying like every politician, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we do have to wait for the 4D chess.
Yeah, there's no 4D chess coming on this.
So what's the alternative here? So if he doesn't get in, but I think he's gonna. Yeah, I don't know. What happens then if they say, you know what, we reject this?
Then some other bureaucrat goes that you'll never hear of, because you don't know that nobody knows of any previous HHS secretary. He's like the first one that anybody has ever like known to be of any note to go into that position. So they'll find another bureaucrat. Maybe, I don't know, give Pete Buttigieg the job. You know, Pete Buttigieg. Give him, he was what, transport secretary before? I didn't hear anything other than things going wrong. You know, a few train cars derailed in Ohio. What else did Pete Buttigieg do? He really got hammered, didn't he?
Oh, he's got a list. Yeah, he's got a wake behind him of burned down chicken factories, crashed planes, crashed boats into bridges. I mean, it goes on. And now we're up to what, 5 plane crashes in the last 60 days, I think, or something like that. Something's it's not a good look.
Is there a popular like TV doctor who used to make the rounds on Fox News, or some health consultant who would come from that crowd? I think
Dr. Oz, perhaps.
Dr. Oz, Ben Carson. I could throw Ben in there. He was HUD secretary. I don't know what he did in 4 years at HUD. Nobody knows. You know, HUD is another one. I think Catherine Austin Fitts was HUD secretary, wasn't she? I'm not sure.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of her, but you know.
I know Dr. Phil. He's got doctor in his name.
Dr. Phil, yeah. Or who else? Yeah, I suppose so. Dr. Phil. Yeah, why not? He's I think he's anti-Trump, though. He might be anti-MAGA. I'm not sure.
Dr. Drew. We could do Drew.
Yeah, Dr. Drew.
Dr. Drew would be cool. Actually, I like Dr. Drew. He's kind of alt media. Okay, so here's the last one, because it's special. So, I mean, this is like the biggest lowlife, by the way. Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon, who is absolute swamp detritus. I mean, this guy is even more sappy than Mitch McConnell, if that's even possible. Okay, so he's going up against Ron Wyden. This would just be like, to me, 10-pin bowling, guys. It's no candlestick bowling. I mean, it's just, you go against these people. They're hated by America. Everybody knows that they've all got at least 10 scandals that they're dragging around. They're taking money from lobbyists left, right, and center. And so RFK could go in there and just start swinging. And the crowd would be like, yeah, that's our man, right? But he doesn't do that. He just caves. And this is the thing that's my big concern with this guy. But here, listen to this. This is about measles, polio, all these things that he's been rubbishing, these vaccines. Is he on board? I don't know. Let's see.
Would like to get my time back. The nominee wrote a book saying that people had been misled into believing that measles is a deadly disease. He's trying now to play down his role in Samoa. That's not what the parents say. That's not what Governor Green says. It's time to make sure that we blow the whistle on actually what your views are. At least we're starting.
We need to move
Senator,
on.
I support the measles vaccine. I support the polio vaccine. I will do nothing as HHS secretary that makes it difficult or discourages people from taking
Anybody who believes that would like to get my time back.
Wow, guys, I mean, that's kind of like the piece de la resistance, isn't it? I will do nothing as HHS secretary to impede the development, distribution, or, popularity of vaccines. So what did he just do the last 5 years at Children's Self-Defense? I mean, there's like 100 people working with Children's Self-Defense. He just threw them all under the bus. And mothers with children with autism, all the different mothers groups, and he backed the childhood vaccine schedule as well. We didn't show that clip. I think we did, but I mean, how much damage can you do to your own credibility within your own base? Like those people that donated to your campaign, the people that put you on the stage, and then you get on the stage and you throw everybody under the bus. And the simps are saying, "Oh, give him a chance. You just got to get in the door, and then once he gets in, he can change it all. He'll be in charge of this and that, and he's going to prosecute Fauci and all this." I mean, the bullshit, the cope is just epic on this.
Yeah, they threw us one bone with RFK, right? It's red number 5 and fluoride in the water. Like,
yeah,
the easiest things to avoid if you know to avoid them on your own. You don't even need the government. I mean, it's great. Thank you for getting the fluoride out of the water. Could we also talk about the plastics and some of this other stuff? Could we talk about Flint, Michigan? Could we talk about the people in North Carolina, the people in Lahaina? There are places that really need some attention when it comes
sure,
to
Hesher,
water.
you can talk about all that, but don't talk about the childhood vaccine schedule.
Yeah,
but talk about all that.
Yeah,
You can talk about all that.
Fruit. It's like the MAGA crowd or dogs. It's stroking the head of the dog here. Oh, we've heard you don't like fluoride. Finally, we heard you dum-dums actually woke up 20 years later to the grift of fluoride, the poison in our water. Well, okay, we'll get rid of that for you. Sure. Oh, you don't like red number 5? You want your Skittles to look more like the ingredients in I don't know, in the European Union than they do here. We can do that for you. We can do that, little MAGAs. We're going to make you healthy again. Now take your child to the vaccine center and make sure they have all 79 jabs by the time they're 5.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's like 150 more by the time they're 18.
Yeah.
And let's just add the repeated COVID and flu shots, as well as the new bird flu shot. And what else? Do you want RSV for adults?
RSV cancer vaccine, maybe a specific cancer vaccine that Larry Ellison and his buddies whipped up for your health.
Stargate. Yeah. We'll predict what you're going to get, and we've got a vaccine for you. Don't worry. OpenAI is going to they're going to figure it out. The AI will figure it out. I'm so excited about this. This is Make America Healthy Again. More vaccines. Thank you, RFK. Thank you, Larry Ellison. Thank you, Donald Trump. Let's do another warp speed. Is there a speed faster than warp speed? Like, remember Battlestar Galactica, FTL, faster than light, FTL drive. Yeah, get an FTL drive online, faster than light.
Spaceballs. They went plaid. Yeah,
they went plaid. It's gonna be that should be the new pattern for Children's Health Defense. A big plaid kind of. They just rebrand to a Scottish tartan. Basil Valentine, welcome to the program. Basil, are you excited about this golden era of vaccines that's coming in with Trump and Warp Speed 2, RFK, Larry Ellison? A lot of people are excited about this. I think we got an audio issue. Let's see. We'll get him back on. You're on mute, Basil.
RFK and Tulsi's confirmations very much in the balance, both of them, particularly Tulsi. Senator Josh Hawley said very much 50-50. Not enough Americans have voiced their support for Tulsi. Now, we both know that she and RFK have come out as ardent Zionists and bent over backwards to mollify the Senate in particular. But what we're seeing is just how entrenched in their lies and malfeasance senators are. I mean, Tulsi was asked to condemn Edward Snowden and wasn't given the opportunity to answer the question. She started answering the question and the senator started jumping all over her answer immediately. any deviation from the Washington, D.C. groupthink is a no-no. So, for all that they've twisted and turned and appear to have abandoned some of their principles, nevertheless, they still might not get through.
Tulsi, Director of National Intelligence. I mean, I got my own sort of take on this. Some people know it if they've been watching my X feed. Hesher, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, Tulsi, I mean, people know my thoughts too. I think she should have been put in charge of sunsetting the Department of Homeland Security. That would be something I trust her with. That would have been a great task for her. She'd be perfect for that. Yeah, but no, I'm the only person I may be less excited about is Marco Rubio. I cannot believe Marco Rubio is in the position that he's in. I mean, talk about a huge vulnerability. Talk about a huge gap in the stability of the American side of geopolitics. I mean, how is it that this is going on? And Tulsi, she's got a lot of fans, and her rebranding was pretty good. I'll give her a B+ on rebranding. I think I mentioned this last week. Zuckerberg gets a D+ on rebranding, and Elon gets an A+ on rebranding. But rebranded is rebranded, and if you're a business owner, rebranding means something different than if you're rebranding your politic as a politician. One needs to be very careful with that. And the only reason Tulsi's looks as good as it does is because she started her rebranding operation in 2022. She's had 2 years to walk back some of her statements, to have her podcast out there, to say the things, again, to stroke the head of the MAGA dog, to make it feel, like, okay, I'm going to be fed, I'm going to be watered, I'm going to get taken on walks. These are good masters. These are better than the previous master that used to kick me and not feed me.
Yeah, Ruckus, Tulsi Gabbard, yay or nay?
Well, what's with her look? She looks like something straight out of a comic book lately. She's got the hair streak thing and the matching outfit during her confirmation day. Yeah, look at that. I'm like, who is this person? Is this for that new movie?
Cruella DeVille? I think
yeah.
you're thinking of
100%.
Cruella DeVille, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Sort of a darker, sort of more exotic Carle.
But I don't trust her, and I've seen some rather unflattering close-up pictures of her lately. I don't want me to judge anybody, but I didn't realize she had a lot of she almost had like a Freddy Krueger kind of look in one of these pictures that I saw somewhere. I'm like, she just looks evil. And like, once these people get power, their countenance starts to change. We've noticed this during the pandemic when local tyrants and governors and mayors were enforcing getting magic powers with a little magic fairy wand by saying, well, it's a public health emergency, so I can do whatever I want now, respect my authority. And then they turn into these ghoulish looking creatures. She's starting to look a little ghoulish to me. I'm just saying. So I think she's in.
The all white. I mean, look at the outfit. She's showing up in all white. It's like, what was that name of that? We were talking about this the other week. It was Equilibrium or something with Christian Bale.
Yep.
I mean, it's just straight out of Equilibrium. Another one. It was like the second one. It's like the whole cast of that film.
They called them clerics in that movie.
Yeah, that was freaky, that film, actually.
Look, I I wouldn't go so far as to say idolized her, but I was very big on her 5-6 years ago.
Did you fancy her?
Pardon?
Did you fancy her?
Well, I think it's fair to say she's probably the most attractive woman on the American political stage of the prominent ones. Anyway,
right.
Competition isn't particularly stiff, but
it's not great.
And she comes across as very forthright and honest, and took principled positions on a lot of things. So while she has been a bit of a chameleon in the last couple of years, put it this way: if she gets rejected, anybody who comes in her stead is going to be worse. They are going to have to be more of a swamp creature to get through the confirmation process. Tulsi may be given some other sinecure, elsewhere in the administration, possibly just join the kitchen cabinet. Who knows? She might disappear into obscurity or just become a TV pundit. But, in terms of, there's a term in economics, Pareto optimum, which means not the actual optimum outcome, because the actual optimum outcome is unattainable. The Pareto optimum is the best that's actually available at this time. And the fact that she's having such a struggle to get through this process because of her views on Snowden and FISA Section 702, which are the main sticking points, let's hope that she does succeed, because you could say, oh, it's just more lesser of two evilisms and all the rest of it. But, she would put the cat amongst the pigeons a bit. And these dreadful hawks and national security state assets that populate Washington have had it all their own way for a long, long time. You can say she's just another one, but she is of a different hue.
Yep. And this message has been endorsed by the Trump campaign. Thank you very much, Basil Valentine, for that. No, so what I think is, this is my controversial position. She's flipped. She was like with Bernie Sanders. She was like booted from the DNC for defending Bernie, a far leftist communist, basically, crazy old professor from Vermont. So she is the Richard Wolff of the U.S. Senate. And so she's done that. Then she flips. Then she goes kind of out of the Democratic Party, goes and attacks Kamala Harris. I love that. Everyone loved that. She was like the titular leader of the U.S. anti-war movement for a period of time, hanging out with Dennis Kucinich. I loved all that. Okay. Then she gets a job at Fox News. No, first she comes on as a pundit regularly. Then she gets a gig, a paid gig at Fox News. And then October 7th happens. And then things change. Then she goes to the wall for Israel. And, we got to do something about these Muslims. And I was like, okay, this is an interesting twist. So I think she's actually potentially the most dangerous of swamp creatures. And I'm going to play you this clip, and I will explain to you. There's a method to why I'm thinking this. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. So here's a clip from, and this will just give you a little taste of this, but here, listen to this. This is what she said. And by the way, I agree in principle with everything pretty much that she has said, everything except for a few things, but generally she said all the right things, but there's something missing.
To my husband, Abraham, my family, friends, fellow veterans, Medal of Honor recipients, and patriots, thank you for your love and support. I'm honored and grateful to President Trump for his trust and confidence in nominating me to serve our country as the Director of National Intelligence at a time when trust in the intelligence community, unfortunately, is at an all-time low. Chuck Schumer admitted a few years ago, quote, "You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you." For too long, faulty, inadequate, or weaponized intelligence have led to costly failures and the undermining of our national security and God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. The most obvious example of one of these failures is our invasion of Iraq based upon a total fabrication or complete failure of intelligence. This disastrous decision led to the deaths of tens of thousands of American soldiers, millions of people in the Middle East, mass migration, destabilization, and undermining of the security and stability of our European allies, the rise of ISIS, strengthening of Al-Qaeda and other Islamist jihadist groups, and strengthening Iran. Here are just a few other examples. The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once, but twice. And yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records. yet was never held accountable.
Okay, just a taste. Now, follow me, guys, on this. She was asked point blank, is Ed Snowden a traitor? And she did not give a straight answer back because she was afraid of maybe she believes that the answer is no, but she felt the pressure from these low-life senators who everybody hates, and she didn't own it. She said, well, what he exposed was illegal wiretapping and Americans' rights were being trampled on, etc. And then they pressed her again, and she repeated. She didn't say yes or no. I would have just said, I mean, she's probably even said he's not a traitor in the past. But this is like, why don't these people own it? And the problem is, if you don't own it, DC will change you. You don't go into DC changing DC from the inside. The DC is going to change you unless you go in there with a baseball bat and like a battering ram and start, swinging and taking names. That's the only way you change DC. So I mean, and Trump is in his own way, it does that. Doesn't always do. I don't agree with all of the swings that he's doing, but at least he's doing that. That's how you change stuff. Tulsi, RFK Jr., 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and she talks about bad intelligence. Okay, where is the bad intelligence coming from? The bad intelligence is coming from our quote allies, Israel with Iraq WMDs, yellow cake uranium, the British, the Steele dossier. All of that stuff, the basis for the Pfizer warrants she's talking about, all tracks back to our allies. And so she's not even addressing that. And Israel, she's totally not addressing that. So I think my theory is, guys, that she's been groomed for this position as DNI to basically launder Israeli intelligence because of that. Oh, I found this one. That's Tulsi with Miriam Adelson and Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. So that's arguably very early in her career, 2016. They recognized her talent, and I call Shmuley Boteach kosher superglue, because once he sticks to you, you can never get rid of this guy. I mean, he's just something. So the fact the Israeli lobby have been after her, like they are with everybody, by the way, especially her. Basil said, good looking, great speaker, forthright, solid. This is exactly, so the lobby will be able to send intelligence into the CIA, and then it comes through the DNI and then to the president. Her job is the gatekeeper between all of the agencies and the president. She curates the intelligence and gives it a threat assessment, validity assessment. So we now know that she is basically beholden to a large degree to Israel, because she's not mentioning them, but yet she's with them.
But having said that, her opening statement there was criticizing the Iraq war, saying that was based on faulty intelligence. Well,
from Israel.
Exactly. So that'll put her in their crosshairs to some extent. It's one of the holy cows. Who cares if tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis were killed? Tony Blair went on to justify the Iraq war, saying, well, even though there were no weapons of mass destruction, it was still a good thing to get rid of Saddam Hussein. And that's the neocon position to this day. The fact that they were proven liars is neither here nor there. No heads have ever rolled or anything like that. So I think it's actually quite courageous to bring that up, because it was Trump's position in 2016.
It's a no-brainer, though.
With the American public, and it's an anti-neocon position.
There's nothing new there, though. Like, it hasn't, like, I mean, it's a great. Everyone's talked about WMDs and Carter Page, and so she didn't mention George Papadopoulos, by the way. I was very disappointed in that. But so the thing, Basil, is it's like nothing new there. What will be new was, and that country that dumped $230 million into the Trump campaign, that country, and who is implicated in spy rings in the United States by our own FBI, that country.
Well, that's not going to happen. We both know that's not going to happen in the short term.
That's what needs to happen. Otherwise, we could have a war with Iran, and Tulsi would be the one to deliver that war with Iran. That's my fear. And America would buy it.
It's an understandable fear.
Just like RFK delivers warp speed, and all of the dissenters would trust him. just like all of the anti-war people would trust Tulsi and Trump. That's the way I'm very, like, I don't know. I'm skeptical of this Israeli thing lingering in the background. That's
Well,
just me.
always.
But I know you guys you have some similar reservations, but jump in, anybody.
Well, this seems to be the trend, right? This is what we've been referring to for some time now, since Elon bought X and allowed Alex Jones to come back, and Kanye came and did his whole shtick. Like, it's okay to talk about all these things now. It's fine. The Overton window has been nudged, shoved, and it's fine if you want to talk about lab leaks. It's fine if you want to talk about WMDs. It's fine if you want to talk about anthrax, JFK, RFK, MLK. These are all fine. We can do that now, guys. Isn't that wonderful? We even 9/11. Am I allowed to say 9/11, 9/11, 9/11? Can I do that on YouTube now? Because
you're the media. You are the media.
I'm the media, so I can say this, right? Like, oh, look at me. I can say the things I've been saying for the last 20 years, and all of a sudden, people on Capitol Hill can say them too. And it's like, we've got all these recently red-pilled people coming in the wake of, Trump era 1,
COVID
/ Trump era 2, / Twitter 1.0 turning into X. So, we're the free speech capital of the world, guys. You can say all of this stuff, but guess what? Now the media is self-policing on the right, just like it was for the left. You've got people in your own party or people that have been fellow travelers who now want to cancel you for not just, following rank and file and indulging in the Q style copium and the Q style 4D chess. Like, that's all fine now. So yeah, it's again, stroking the head of the dog here. It's great to see some of these things said openly on social media by big accounts or on Capitol Hill by someone who's billed as Make America Great Again. But it's late. It's really late. Why are we focusing on that when we've got things that just happened? And credit to her for bringing out the Russiagate thing. But again, Russiagate again, late, really late. And if you were talking about it when it was timely, you were censored. So I think this is part of the rebranding of everything is that self-policing aspect within the MAGA and within social media feedback loops that are just going to shut people down, consider them less than serious if they're not just stuck on those approved talking points now. And it's a very different environment that we're in, and it's exciting sometimes because you see things said that you've known for a long time, and it's like, yes, finally. But where's the second piece? Where's the third piece? Where's the piece that applies to yesterday, today, and tomorrow? Like, when does that get mentioned?
Can it get mentioned when it's actually happening, or do we have to always wait 3 years before it's okay? Like before the Overton window, before it's in the Rogan Overton window, which is just about 18 months off to the right there. Ruckus, put a purple sheen on this black pill, please. Some people might not want to swallow the pure black.
Well, I mean, it feels a lot like you're between a rock and a hard place. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because you guys pointed out, if it's not these people, it's going to be somebody else. I mean, so none of this is helping, unfortunately. It is a clear sign of where we're headed. And, if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything. So I wish these people at least would, stick to their guns. I mean, even if they're not going to get confirmed, but showing us that, for whatever reason, whether they're like, well, this is an admission that we lied to you in the past, or this is an admission that we're willing to lie now in order to further whatever agenda it may be, whether or not the agenda is something that might be good for us in the end. Why do we have to keep doing the lying part? Like, can't we all just move forward to past all the lies and propaganda? But no, that's not going to happen anytime soon. Thank God for X and the free speech, and that's where I'll be hanging out, playing the new role of the new media. Yay!
That's right, Ruckus. That's right. I'm waiting for that shirt. waiting for that T-shirt there. Give it a big corporate leap there on the stage. Give it a good IPO, memcoin leak. Let's talk about memcoins. Oh my God, don't even know where to start there with Trump. Basil, your thoughts on this? Are we way off base here? And why not just get rid of the DNI and the DHS and the Department of Education? And why not just slash all of those departments full stop? Is that going to happen?
Well, who knows? Musk hasn't really got his hands on the Doge yet, has he? The Department of Government Efficiency. The one I'd like to see disappear above all would be the so-called Department of Homeland Security. I remember Gore Vidal, the late Gore Vidal, being particularly outraged at the notion of this homeland. The whole idea, the concept behind it was fundamentally un-American, he said. And of course, it was created in the wake of 9/11, itself the biggest false flag event of the 21st century by a long way. So it's always been particularly sinister, if you ask me, because it was set up, by the Patriot Act, which had been prepared in advance of 9/11. We can't expect Tulsi to start unpicking all that kind of thing. But Josh Hawley did at least say the day before yesterday that the wiretapping on Americans, the surveillance of Americans, should end. So, two of you are in the States. I mean, I don't really. I think if they want to tap somebody, they'll do it anyway, regardless of what the law says or what they're supposed to do. But I mean, I'm still hopeful that aspects of this administration will be an improvement on the last, because it couldn't really be any worse. Having said that, a lot will be revealed in the next couple of days with Netanyahu's trip to Washington. Worth noting that he's flown through the airspace of 3 ICC member states, also European Union nations, without any problem. And really, as a fugitive, they should have refused permission for his plane to overfly. In fact, he's carrying on around the world as if that had never happened, frankly. And of course, in the US, they're looking to sanction the ICC for daring to indict him for war crimes. So, many aspects of Washington polity are heading in the wrong direction. You mentioned one dreadful senator earlier. I'd like to add the name Tom Cotton. I mean, my God, what an abysmal human being. He wants to delete the designation of the West Bank and refer to them instead by the names Judea and Samaria, which of course are the terms used by the settlers and many in the Israeli government who want to annex the West Bank. So we're in a period of particularly intense flux and change, shall we say. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you're in the States, Hesher and Rucker. There seems to have been a lot more noticing going on. People are noticing the influence of Israel on American politics, I think, more than ever before. Of course, we've had Trump's executive order to start deporting students who protest against genocide. This is really off the charts, abysmal stuff. And Ron DeSantis has said in Florida that he will expel Americans from Florida if they dare to support Palestinian resistance or are too vociferous in their opposition to genocide. But this doesn't play very well with aspects of the MAGA base. We saw Tucker Carlson talking to Piers Morgan in another sort of extraordinary interview where Tucker, for all that he said he liked Israel, he'd been there on holiday with his kids, had the temerity to say that killing women and children was morally a bad thing. And Piers Morgan tried to defend it. I mean, we're in completely uncharted territory here in the first few months of 2025 on multiple fronts.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are definitely noticing it. It's become a much wider topic. They're going to have a hard time containing that. I mean, look at the links they went to with TikTok just to contain some of the more visceral imagery and analysis. And now, like, you go to X or even Zuckerberg's platform, not so much Facebook, but on Instagram, a lot of people there talking about it in ways that you would not have seen just a couple of years ago. So I'm definitely noticing a renewed interest in the topic. People are looking at things that they probably thought they would never be looking into, looking at math, looking at numbers, looking at history, and go, wait a minute, some of this doesn't make sense. And, so that's a good thing, having a wider interest in the history and the geopolitical tapestry and, all the atrocities that we're seeing. We've got one of our regulars, our friend Whitebird in the Discord right now, just said, I wonder what Israel's going to do with 1,800 JDAMs, 2,000-pound bombs. Like, it was like the EOs, the good, the bad, and the fugly here. It's like, okay, we're going to stop foreign aid for 90 days. This is probably a good thing. But then 2 days later, it's like, well, most foreign aid, but we're going to send these, almost 2,000 bombs, 2,000-pound bombs, JDAMs to Israel. Where are they going to drop them? Why do they need so many right now? Like, where are the people asking these questions?
Oh,
Those
they're
are
going to be
defensive
making
weapons, I thought.
Yeah, that's correct, Ruckus.
And of course, to go further than noticing, I mean, it was only 5 or 6 years ago. I'm sure you remember, Patrick. I came across the late great Michael Collins Piper's book, Final Judgment on the JFK Assassination, which was the first major work to draw attention to the Israeli connection. And now we are seeing it mentioned on Tucker Carlson's podcast. The fact that JFK wanted to stop Israel's nuclear program, which was stolen from the United States, register AIPAC as a foreign agent, and arguably most importantly, impose a permanent settlement, permanent immutable borders on Israel. That was also on his agenda. So using their mob contacts, of course, mafia, people talk about mafia, they automatically assume that you're talking about Italian organized crime. But the mob, Murder Inc., headed by Meyer Lansky in the 1960s, was also a largely Jewish organization. Lansky played a pivotal role. It's all there in black and white. Now you can learn about it from Tucker Carlson, of all people. This is really breaching a levee. Now, we're a long way away from the point where, it's in the corporate media or there are politicians standing up and saying, hey, what about the fact that it looks like JFK was murdered by Mossad? We're miles and miles away from that. But we're also a long way away from where we were 5 or 10 years ago in terms of public awareness of that issue in particular.
Yeah, they got LBJ. There was the audio that's released. Roger Stone, I remember saw him tweet that out, and so that implicates somebody who mentioned LBJ put a hit out on JFK. I mean, that in itself is a piece of evidence. It's not definitive, but of course, the Israeli story, Meyer Lansky, the mob using cutouts. This is just normal, but. Just on the subject, you read my mind there, Hesher, and this is a really good post here by Pelham, resist_05, awesome account. I'm not sure who she is, but she's always killing it on Twitter. She said, this is a tongue-in-cheek, by the way, guys. Okay, so she said, if Trump was really controlled by Israel, then he would sign an executive order to take sanctions off illegal settlers so they can continue to steal Palestinian homes and land. If Trump was really controlled by Israel, he would sign an executive order to end foreign aid, but exempt Israel. He would stop the funding of the WHO so UNRWA could not feed displaced Palestinians. Interesting. He would sign an executive order to allow aid to Egypt and Jordan so that they could take in Gaza refugees, aka ethnic cleansing. He would withdraw from the Paris Agreement so he could steal $500 billion in oil and gas fields off of Gaza. That's debatable anyway. Or he would ban TikTok until they changed their algorithms to censor pro-Palestinian content. He would sign an executive order to deport any non-citizen that protests against Israel. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it kind of illustrates the point of this kind of double standard. Yeah, go ahead, guys.
Yeah, because he's done. Of course, he's done all those things. The Egypt situation in particular is very interesting. Some people have been saying there's an Egyptian military buildup in the Sinai and that the Egyptians are preparing for war. Certainly, Trump is planning on using the fact that Egypt is the recipient of hundreds of millions of dollars of aid to try and pressure them into taking Gazan refugees in large numbers, something they said they refused to do. I mean, that's the reason why, as people say, why the Egyptians and the Jordanians have been so quiet, so pathetic in the face of the genocide, basically because they're bribed. Simple as that. They're bribed to shut up. Well, Trump is now saying we want something more from our bribes than just your silence and complicity in the genocide. We want you to go along with the ethnic cleansing. Worth noting, of course, that the corporate media uses terms like relocation and evacuation rather than ethnic cleansing, which is what it is.
Yes, there's a lot of this stuff is crazy. I mean, he's really pushing people into Egypt and Jordan. He came out, got it on the hot mic or whatever on the airplane on the audio, and then he kind of gets to the desk the following day, reiterates it, and basically saying, "Oh, it's a mess. It's a mess. It's a pile of rubble. It's in really bad shape there. You know, really bad, really bad, really bad. We've got to move them to a safe place. You know, kind of like Donald. How did it get to be rubble? By the way, like that is the kind of conversation. That's the one I want to hear. But no. Oh, it's really bad. It's really bad. It's really bad.
Well, I think Steve Witkoff, his envoy, who brokered the ceasefire, I think he was.
When did it? Before he became an envoy, what was he? Trump's accountant? Like, what is he?
Something like that. Good question. You know, good question. He obviously doesn't have a smartphone because he was totally shocked at the state of Gaza when he went there. He said it's not safe to walk. There's unexploded ordnance everywhere. There's hardly a building standing. You know, one can only hope that degree of shock will take it back to Washington. And you know, well, we know that Trump has picked the most Zionist foreign policy squad in history, but perhaps there are some in his inner circle who may be shocked by what he's seen. You know, they're still not allowing journalists in there. Still not allowing Western journalists in.
And why are they not allowing Western journalists in Gaza? Because they don't want the world to see more about what's going on. They don't want to hear more eyewitness accounts. They don't want the journalists going up to like children and mothers and talking to doctors. They don't want.
That's right.
That's why there's a ban on journalists there. And if there's more Western journalists in Gaza, Israel's got to be careful what they bomb. That's another thing.
Yes.
So it's strategic on the part. It's very cynical on the part of Israel, but it's like, anyway, I share your optimism on that, Basil. I think it's good that Trump's envoy got a little look in on the real situation, because Tony Blinken sure as hell didn't.
No, exactly. Yeah.
He's a real estate guy too, I think, the Witkoff guy. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all real estate guys, and Trump's everyone's in property. He's a property. So I got a couple properties on Atlantic City, Ocean City Beach, Jersey Shore.
I thought I'd heard some audio somewhere of Trump talking at some point about, referring to land in Gaza as a beautiful beachfront property.
Yeah, he said
wow.
That. Kushner as well.
Kushner's the one to watch out for.
Yeah.
He'll be pushing to get his hands on it.
With Saudi money. Saudi money. Saudis put a good chunk into his private equity fund. And so that was the Abraham Accords. It was a property deal. That was
Yeah,
a
Wyckoff is a billionaire real estate investor and developer and an attorney.
yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure they have their eyes. I mean, it's a lovely beach, beautiful ocean. Just have to get rid of the Palestinians, right, guys? I mean,
That's
all.
right. Just get rid of those pesky locals.
If we can solve that problem. So they want to gentrify Gaza and turn it into, it's got great potential. Could put casinos there. As he's thinking, he's creative like
A
that.
golf course, perhaps?
Golf. Oh, yeah, of course. Maybe a Trump Tower at Gaza, Mar-a-Lago by the Med,
God.
club, maybe.
It's gonna be tough to park your super yacht on the on next to the debris pier, right? They're gonna have to make a real pier, I suppose, so the super yachts can come park.
Yeah, unexploded ordinances as well. You're gonna need the EOD teams on standby just in case. So it can be great. It's great. We're gonna have sappers in there. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be great. Really good. Really great.
Well, Trump wants to move away from the Middle East. He doesn't want it to dominate his presidency. That's the word out of Washington. Rubio's gone to the Caribbean and Panama for his first tour, and insiders are saying, well, that's indicative of the fact that Trump wants to focus on the Western Hemisphere, on stopping immigration. Of course, he wants to try and steal the Panama Canal. I don't know. That's not going down very well in Panama itself. They've been protesting against that. And of course, his ludicrous idea of getting hold of Greenland, I mean, this is really off the charts stuff. But he wants the whole Middle East thing settled. He really wants Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. But for the time being, at least, they're saying no deal without a Palestinian state, or at least, well, this much promised pathway, the pathway to a Palestinian state, which of course means nothing, just means the long grass again.
It's more like the pathway to Persia, if you ask me. I mean, this Syria thing has also gone from bad to worse. I don't know what the latest was, but there's like sectarian street executions and reprisals. And Israel set up their first base in Syrian territory this week, so they're doing good progress. So they'll have annexed the Golan Heights, all of it, before too long.
The moderates are cool with that, huh? No problems there with Israel coming in and setting up military shop. That's fine. Geez.
That's real normalization. Come on in,
Yeah.
Do you like that chunk of land there? You can have it. We don't care. We don't care. And you can turf everybody off that lives there as well. Build settlements. It's okay. Put a military base. Open an embassy in Damascus.
And there are new settlements happening right now, right? People being kicked out of their homes, intimidated, terrorized, and settlements forming in multiple places, right?
Yeah, in the West Bank, basically the zoo's been emptied and the settlers are out on the street. And that's the plan, is to push them into Jordan, and push the others in Gaza into the Sinai Desert. And that's a perfectly plausible solution for the Israelis now. So that's what you're up against. With Trump is kind of backing all that. I don't really think he's got a full appreciation of the situation, nor does he really care. But I'm hoping that he might find a little bit of compassion, a little bit of insight, something, maybe a Damascene conversion like Saul of Tarsus, the road to Damascus. Could have happened to Trump, maybe, somehow. Might not be the road to Damascus, might be the road to Newark or something like that, but knows.
Well, years ago, of course, when he was first running back in 2014 or something, he said he would be even-handed in negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians. And of course, that brought howls of anger and opprobrium from the lobby. Well, how dare you say you're going to be even-handed? He was supposed to be on our side. And since then, he's fallen into line, hasn't he? He took Sheldon Adelson's money, and now Sheldon's widow, Miriam.
That's right. He got summoned by Sheldon after he made that statement in 2015. That was in late November, early December 2015, early in the election cycle.
That's
and
right.
He made that statement. Everyone was like, "Wow, this guy is amazing."
Yeah.
He is afraid of the lobby, and then all of a sudden, Sheldon
right.
gave him the call from Vegas. Donald, come to the
Don't. It's tragic. I mean,
come for a steak
it's
dinner in the Sands or whatever his casino was. Or, I don't know, but and the rest is history. They
and
haven't
the
let
rest
go.
is history. Yes. Yeah.
Here's an interesting thought. Isn't the whole idea that we provide so much money and weaponry to Israel is basically, they say it out loud half the time too. They'll say, well, so that they can fight against, Iran and all those people for us. Because if we don't do that, Iran is going to attack us, right? That's the general rule of thumb here, the idea, or some country like that full of these jihadist terrorist types, right? So, but how much do you want to bet that if we actually pulled all of our foreign troops out of all of those foreign lands and kept them at home just to protect us, and then we withdrew all the funding to Israel, which one is going to attack us first, Iran or Israel?
Well, what kind of attack? False flag, maybe?
Well, we've never seen anything like that happen before, Patrick. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, never.
Presidential assassination, perhaps, in the dance card there on that one.
That's never happened in America. You guys are such conspiracy theorists, honestly. Like, what sort of channels do you guys watch getting all these crazy ideas? You sound like
We learned by watching RFK Jr.
holdovers from like 2008.
I haven't watched anything but Trump signing EOs for the past 12 days, I think.
Yeah, what is it with his signature too? I can't work out what is that thing. It looks like a sort of EKG reading or something.
I was saying on one of the streams, it looks like a death metal logo, like it could be like the new Napalm Death logo or something like that.
Flatline,
Yeah.
It's like,
I saw one of his fans who were happy with all of the executive orders saying, like, we could get these done faster, sir, if you just sign your name quicker.
yeah, just do an X. There you go. Oh, who would name their kid after an app? He did that, didn't he? He fucking did that.
Only a technocrat.
He did that. And the kid's going to regret it, by the way, when he gets to be an adult. I've seen how this plays out in Hollywood, by the way, and it's not pretty. When they get into their 20s, Oh, and it's public that the dad does drugs. That's not good. Every time that goes bad in Hollywood, the kids of stars can never live up to their dad's level. Dad did drugs, so I'm going to do drugs. It's just like the vicious cycle.
It's got to be such a strange childhood. We were doing a breakdown of this on Boiler Room a couple months ago, and we were looking at articles talking about how Elon has I don't know where he's at in this process or how real it is, but it was saying that Elon is trying to buy an entire neighborhood somewhere here in Texas so that he can put all three of his, or four or five, I don't know how many, baby mamas he's got, but he wants to have them all basically, like he wants to have his own suburb, like, a big bazillionaire suburb where all his various children and baby mamas can reside. So, I mean, it's pretty crazy. He's got like 11 kids, I think. And we also did a breakdown of his kid's name because it's like X.264B. And his that's the one that he had with one of the ones he had with Grimes, the pop artist.
Yeah.
And it was just the most bizarre thing to go through and see like why they named the kid that, what it's supposed to mean, like the way he wants to set up his family life. I mean, talk about someone disconnected from real American life. That's the guy.
Oh, real conservative values, Hesher. I mean, really. I mean, conservative American relate to that. It's it's really, it's like, yeah, they made him. So what? They have a baby farm, but they made a movie in the 70s called The Boys from Brazil. That's what that was about, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mangala had his birthing farm in Brazil, The Boys from Brazil. And back to the Nazis again. There I go. I just slipped into that just without even thinking. I didn't mean to do that, but hey, guys, I've got a couple of minutes left. So yeah, listen, we'll go around the horn and want to comment on any stories this week. There's been some crazy things. The DC plane crash, that's a wild one, but don't want to really get into the weeds on that. But I'm happy to hear comments on that from anybody. But we'll go around the horn. I'll finish with Basil because I know he's probably got some gambling related something to corrupt our audience with towards the end. But Hesher, go ahead.
Yeah, no big final rounds for me here. I'm keeping an eye on the aviation disasters, various aviation disasters, and yeah, you're right. It's a rabbit hole. I don't even want to really scratch the surface on that one, other than say stay tuned, because more things like this are clearly going to be happening. This, so a lot of fun stuff to and grim stuff to analyze here with you guys. Really appreciate you having me, Patrick. Great show. Big shout out to Jeffrey. That was great. And check us out in the boiler room. We'll be having one Thursday, if not sooner, right here at alternatecurrentradio.com. And all the latest are up there in the archive on the website. Follow us on Rumble. We're Boiler Room on Rumble. We're Alternate Current Radio on YouTube. I'm at Hesher Media on X and IG. So follow us out there and throw some support our way. If you've been thinking about it, now's a great time to do it. 21 Wire has their winter fundraising campaign going right now. Alternate Current Radio needs help too. So we really appreciate that. And have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. Looking forward to the next show over here with Sunday Wire.
Yeah, the Boiler Room, ladies and gentlemen, you can check that out. Just go to alternatecurrentradio.com. That's obviously the main hub for ACR, and you'll see broadcast times. We've also tagged Hesher here at Hesher Media. That's on X if you're on this platform where you're watching it live. But follow the Boiler Room, follow Hesher. Ruckus, final words. Any thoughts on any of the stories that we've covered or didn't cover?
Yeah, there are a lot of emerging breaking news stories, mostly from, winged things falling from the sky and exploding and making people wonder, was that really a plane? Is that a missile? As if you folks are experts in either of those departments. So you might want to just sit down and wait till everything is settled. They weren't even done pulling bodies out before we had wild conspiracy theories about the DC copter crash. So yeah, you got to wait sometimes. It's never good to immediately start speculating, especially at the cost of your, I don't know. It doesn't look good sometimes, especially if you're incorrect. Now, I've been paying attention to the big story this week before the crashes was the DeepSeek thing. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but I thought that was very, very unique and important, especially right on the heels of what we were discussing about the Operation Stargate thing, or Project Stargate. I get confused, but we're just going to say, here's a gajillion, million, bazillion, and an endless supply of money for AI. And then China said, hold my beer. Here's a free, cheaper version of ChatGPT, and it just absolutely broke everything. It broke the markets. It broke the tech stocks. It broke crypto. Everything went down, 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 and now people are like rethinking everything. So it just goes to show you that sometimes these big tech bros are just blowing smoke up your you know what. So we got to be careful. It's very interesting. But I will probably be covering some of that on my show, of course, which you can find at alternatecurrentradio.com. I do have a new episode available of the Daily Ruckus, part of my series there. What's it called? 12 Days of Ruckus. But this is where you guys go to find all of that, okay? So thanks for having me, Patrick. Nice to see you, Basil. And that was a great interview you had earlier. So I'm gonna have to re-listen to that one because there was moments where I should have been taking notes and I did not. So I will have to play that back.
The Daily Ruckus, ladies and gentlemen, great podcast. Ruckus, again, up on alternatecurrentradio.com. And do visit that website. If you're on our show page at 21st Century Wire, there's a link to ACR right at the top of the page. And I will say on that DeepSeek story, Ruckus, very interesting you bring that up. That is a huge thing. And, of course, the reaction from Trump is, well, we're going to have to throw up a firewall, a great wall of, American AI, got to throw up a firewall. So he's going to block it, basically. It's an executive order, illegal to get involved or touch any Chinese AI research. So that's how we solve it. Let's throw up some walls. We're $37 trillion in debt. Let's just start throwing up walls. That'll work. Yeah, that's a good solution. So, so basically what he's saying is we can't compete with China. We can't compete with China, so we're going to have to build our own Great Wall. Thank you, Donald. I like it. It's so creative. I don't think it's going to work, though. I don't think technology doesn't really work like that, does it?
Well,
Generally,
hopefully not. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I must admit, I had a quiet chuckle. $2 trillion wiped off the tech sector with a stroke of a
yeah,
pen. And what's more, they developed their thing for basically a pocket full of change compared to the billions spent by American tech firms. They did it for next to nothing. So, even if Trump builds a wall, the cat's out of the bag to some extent. The emperor has no clothes. And surely it's only a matter of time before somebody this side of the Great Wall of China comes up with another low-cost version that's even better. I mean, I think people have jumped the gun a bit with these tech stocks, haven't they?
yeah. Like Nvidia itself is like worth more than like the entire GDP of like a Europe or something crazy. I don't know, something stupid like that. But that big chunk of value got wiped off there when the Chinese put up their little $6 million side hustle. It's like, I loved it though, because it just like it deflated Sam Altman, who to me is like the biggest overrated, an overinflated CEO character. Like he's so creepy as well. Like when he talks, makes Mark Zuckerberg seem like a pretty cool guy. Like I'm more on the Spicoli camp now after hearing Sam Altman, who is really kind of creepy, to be honest. And he's talking about, well, in the future, I don't know exactly when, but you're going to have to AI is going to make sure you behave. And he was just talking about all this stuff about your behaviors and stuff like that. I'm like, well, I'll go surfing with Spicoli and just hang out on Facebook, forget the AI. Okay, we'll go back to Facebook. Wow, Facebook's not censoring. That's kind of like a renaissance. You know what I mean? It's just like interesting one, huh?
Yeah.
Yep.
If AI is the new COVID, then the what just happened there was Nvidia is like the big pharma, and then the DeepSeek was like the ivermectin. So they're going to shut it down.
I like that. I like DeepSeek as the ivermectin of AI. Beautiful. Oh my gosh, that's the sort of great concepts and metaphors that we are generating real time with our own AI by putting our four brains together here, generating t-shirt designs and other things. So yeah, we got to work on that, Ruckus. We really need to upgrade this. I got to get a sound effect to it. And maybe, yeah, some really cool merch will be really good. Basil, your final thoughts before we say sayonara this week at Sunday Wire. Go ahead.
Well, very quickly, the UK here, Starmer's popularity continues to plummet. He's far and away the most unpopular prime minister at this stage of a parliament since polling records began. And to add to his woes, his own chief of staff described him as an HR manager. Other people have described him as a national security state administrator. He's certainly not a leader. Turns out he'd been going for voice lessons to try and sound more authoritative. But in a new book, one of his
Really?
key personnel, Morgan McSweeney, said he was an HR manager. So Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has had to come out and say, "Oh no, he's absolutely brilliant," but everybody can see through him. To the extent that even though Labour has one of the biggest majorities in Parliament of the last 100 years, they are as big as 7-4 to be the largest party after the next election. Basically, it's a 3-horse race. Reform are as short as 2-1, with some firms to be the largest party after the next election. That's far and away the shortest price for any third party, again, since polling or betting on such matters began. And worth noting that the BBC, certainly in the personage of Laura Kunsberg, have been talking up Farage more than ever, as if there's something inevitable, believe it or not, about a Farage prime ministership.
I can kind of see it happening, to be honest, but that's going to need a coalition, isn't it, to get in there? It's going to have to be what? Tory reform, power sharing agreement?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Yeah. Starmer's got a big hurdle first because an MP is due in court on assault charges, and there's going to be a by-election. And really, in these by-elections, he stands, I think, more likely to lose to a genuine left-wing populist, someone from the Workers' Party of Great Britain or an independent. There's still talk of another new left party being launched by Jeremy Corbyn and his allies. Hasn't happened yet, based on the 5 independent MPs who were elected in July, and who, incidentally, Corbyn highlighted, have written to the Foreign Office, to the minister, saying, why is, what's going on with these spy flights on behalf of Israel? And hasn't had any answers yet to his letter. So, Britain's complicity in the genocide is there for all to see.
What would be a good name for this new party that Corbyn's forming? They're a genius, by the way, to put independents together and form a party. How about what's left? What's left?
I think they could do with some. Yeah, I don't know if there's room with our political system for 2 genuinely left-wing parties, Workers' Party and Corbyn's party. I think they'd have to do some kind of deal if they're going to win any seats. And of course, both of them, because, going back to the original reason why Corbyn was politically assassinated, they both are supporters of Palestinian human rights. So any genuine left party is automatically smeared as anti-Semitic, as well as everything else,
Or you could just go back to the basics, rebrand to the MLUK, Marxist-Leninist UK party.
Well, the Living Marxism, I didn't realize, was a supposedly Marxist magazine that disappeared about 20 years ago, when a lot of magazines.
Yeah. LM, Noam Chomsky used to publish in there.
And it turned into Spiked, believe it or not.
Was that Spike? No.
Yes. Yes.
Spike was from Scallywag.
Living Marxism became Spiked.
Really?
Yes.
I thought Spike came from Scallywag.
No, and Living Marxism was, believe it or not, the a publication of the Workers' Revolutionary Party, the Revolutionary Communist Party, sorry, the RCP.
Spiked is right wing, it's conservative.
Exactly. That's the kind of somersault that people have done. It's now identified as right libertarian, with some non-specialist sources identifying it as left libertarian. Okay. Well, there you go. But what's his name? Brendan O'Neill has been penning endless garbage about the genocide. Really, really abhorrent stuff.
Yeah, not to be confused with the other O'Neill and LBC. He's all right, right? That guy, he's been doing.
Yes, although of course, he was all in favor of amplifying the anti-Semitism smears 5 years ago. So
5 years ago, yeah. So he swapped.
Likewise, Owen Jones, who's now emerged as the hero of Palestine, of course.
Yeah. Suddenly, those guys are really good at reading the room, watching the crowd, and then pivoting really quick to make sure they're not left out in the lurch, so to speak.
Yeah.
Always a good skill set for a politician. Be able to pivot in midstream, even if you're betraying everything that you've said and look like a complete hypocrite and a shill. It's a good skill set in politics and mainstream media. You have to admit, it always comes in handy, doesn't it?
On both sides of the Atlantic.
Sure does. Well, I really enjoyed that Senate hearing critique, guys. I thought that was fun. So yeah, we'll see what happens this week. We got a few more doozies. There'll be some votes. We'll have a clear picture of what this cabinet might look like, a little better anyway, this week. So there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm looking forward to that. But thank you, Bryan McClain, aka Hesher, Adam Clark, otherwise known as Ruckus, and Mr. Basil Valentine, joining us on the Sunday Wire Overdrive segment.
Touch wood, we will be back with the Pulse today, formerly Today's News Talk. Been saying this for a little while, but at some point in the next couple of weeks or so, we will be back on air.
Okay, that's exciting news. Good to hear. That's good to hear. Well, we wish the best of luck, the team at the Pulse. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to shape up as well. All right, you guys have a good one, and check out Hesher on the Boiler Room. Basil will be floating around as well. Hopefully I'll see all you guys next week here on the live broadcast. Thank you very much. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. This has been an epic Sunday Wire here on the Alternate Current Radio Network, and a special thanks to Jeffrey Brodsky, independent journalist, writer, for this fantastic exclusive piece here up at 21st Century Wire right now. And that's former Ukrainian commander-in-chief can be prosecuted for role in Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. It's actually a devastating strategic political article. If you think about it, it's really thrown a spanner into the works to the NATO states. Do they really have any judicial system law, or are they going to stand by these stories and plots that they themselves are making, like the Ukrainian soldier diver Andromeda yacht story? I mean, that's the big question. So we'll see for sure. But what we're going to do now is probably say goodbye. Thank you very much again for joining us here, and also a reminder, if you haven't yet already, go to 21stcenturywire.com. You can also see this on my X feed as well. Our Winter Fund Drive is happening right now for 21st Century Wire. If you like the programming that we're doing on Sunday, plus the Midweek Wire, which we just launched, we had a great piece with Freddie Ponton. We'll have another great episode coming up probably on Wednesday. We'll be live on X, Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, as well as Facebook Live. That's going to be an interesting one. That's coming this week. And we need your help to basically expand our operation. We have a great team of a combination of volunteers, part-time people, plus myself as well as editor of 21st Century Wire. But we really need to fund our operation for the next 12 months, and we need your donations and your support to do that. Anything that you can help us with, we greatly appreciate, and we'll go to absolutely into the operation. So you can be sure of that. And also our written investigative work, which we've featured this week and the previous week as well. We've got more of that on the offering. Also consider subscribing and becoming a member at 21wire.tv. That's 21wire.tv. That's also on the donate support page. That option's there. Very inexpensive, monthly. Listen, I know you guys are out there. I know you like what we do, and we really need your support going forward and on a regular basis. So please consider helping us. This will help us launch into the new year. And we have a whole bunch of things in addition to what we've launched, new stuff as well, more new stuff coming. So really appreciate any of you who've found it in your hearts and in your ways and means to support us here. And that's all we have time for this week. Take care, you guys. It's been absolutely amazing. And also do check out we're going to actually have a couple of very interesting stories coming out during the week. So keep an eye on 21stcenturywire.com. But that's all we have time for. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host, signing out. All the best.
For in the final analysis, we all inhabit this small planet, and we are all mortal.
Lately I've been watching the world gone mad. Brothers and sisters full to take a stand, to hate their fellow man, another man. Divide and conquer is the acronym plan. Distract the people, control the story. Don't believe your lying eyes, you know me. Stay in power no matter what. Playing with the doomsday clock. Turn a blind eye and gather your trust. Pushing us to turn to good. Corruption and lies. justify their death that comes from an evil sky. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. In God's somehow. Damaged like a nuclear bomb, dressed in a kill box. People can't escape. They're told to leave, but where can they go? A genocide, some think it's biblical faith. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. In Gaza somehow. Cause this might be the last time to raise a hand about who we are. What's this say about who we are? 'Cause this might be the last time to raise a hand about who we are. What's this say about who we are? Digital images and digital lies cut out their heart along with their supplies. The propaganda leads to dehumanize our fellow humans and silence their cries. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. In Gaza somehow. Without equality, there will always be war. We have all a history to see how it's happened before. Travel as equals, equality for all, or else mankind will surely fall. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. In Gaza somehow. Cause this might be the last time to raise a hand about who we are. What's this say about who we are? This might be the last time to raise a hand about who we are. What's this say about who we are?
eyes contact. They watch our every move. They examine our togetherness like we've got something to prove. I've looked behind your eyes. I've seen the sadness you hide. I've looked into your eyes. I've seen the tears that you've cried. No, I won't get used to these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains. In the legal arena, upset theaters are staged. She moves in circles. Her cruel games cause delays. From the questions you ask me, like why can't you come home tonight? From the moment you hold me, it's the shortest hour of my life. No, I won't get used to these chains. I've got to be careful with what I say. Their conspiracy of silence, they think the truth will lead you astray. They say that they're here for you, but they never listen to what you say. They've built walls between us. I will walk through walls to break these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains. No, I won't get used to these chains.